a regular council meeting of the Council of the Town of St. Andrews on Monday, July 6th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Recording of attendance, I note that all members of council are in attendance with the exception of Councillor Harrison, who will join us later in progress. I will look for a friendly amendment to the agenda for this evening. I would like to interchange item D, approval of minutes of previous meetings, with item E, presentation, since we have two presenters. And if that's all right with council, I will then look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop, and a seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Apogee. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We will now go to disclosure of conflict of interest in relation to any matter before council this evening. Being done, we move ahead. So we'll now directly go to presentations. We have two presentations this evening, and Mr. Knopper, can I turn that over to you to orchestrate those, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We are still waiting on Carolyn Davies to come on, so I will actually go to David Johnson, who will be presenting the Coastal Link Trail presentation and the Van Horn Trail. So, Mr. Johnson, you have the floor to council.
Thank you very much. Your Worship and members of the council, thank you for letting me speak with you about this. I'm talking about Sortie and our trails. And that's, something happened. So, how do I share now?
Hit your share button.
I hit it. Yes, there it is.
And
There
you need
you
to
are.
select the screen.
Okay. Now, where am I? There will now be a slight delay while I panic.
Your Worship, maybe just while Mr. Johnson's working through his presentation, I'll just like to advise Tanny Harrington's also on the line, who's with the Regional Service Commission and has been spearheading this. So she may want to have a couple of follow-up points of interest. I don't see Lara Cooper, the local representative, but maybe she'll join in too.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Spear.
Something's happening. Good.
There we go.
Daylight. Are we there? Yes.
You're there.
Thank you. Thank you very much again. So, Sortie was set up as an independent not-for-profit by Kiwanis at the end of 2018, and we took over the Kiwanis Van Horn Trail. Then Kiwanis had been building the trail since 2014. Prior to Kiwanis taking over trail building, there were other groups in town who wanted to build trails, including a group which involved Bill and Ellen Dalton. I just thought I should like to mention these two who are now both deceased. They were very keen on trail building, and apparently they sat outside the Save Easy selling memberships in the New Brunswick Trail system, Sentier New Brunswick. So we have more than 5 kilometers of off-road active transport greenways. The active transport and greenway, a jargon. Active transport means the trail users use their own power to either walking, biking, skateboarding, and so on. Greenways basically says the same thing. So internal combustion engines are not allowed on active transport greenways. Most of our trails are paved, allowing maximal accessibility. This is the Rose Lane Trail, which we expect our contractor any day now to complete the landscaping there. We've been expecting it for a little time, but we live in hope. this is someone else using our trail. This was 2 or 3 years ago. The lady in the wheelchair was over 90. This was when we completed the trail to Katie's Cove, which is damaged in the recent storm. This was the first time in 20 years that she'd managed to get out to Katie's Cove, so she was elated by being able to do that. This is other family members, so it's multi-generation family going out there. So when combined with the quiet roads around town, we have a walking cycling loop of about 9 kilometers. And this is the map of the route that we have there. The green is our off-road Van Horn Trail, which runs from Water Street Kiosk to Rose Lane, with the division there going to Katie's Cove, which was where we had our disaster. The trail then gets onto the Bar Road, where the town has built a cycling path. We go along Cornelia Street, which is a private road, and I know the residents there are objecting to cars going along there and kicking up dust and so on. Hopefully we can still include this on our map. I haven't talked to any residents on Cornelia Street. Then onto Marine Science Drive, where again the town put a wide paved shoulder, and through the golf course on Brandy Cove Road, which is a town road. Brandy Cove Road takes us to Joe's Point Road, and then we follow it along to Water Street and back to the kiosk. The blue lines on the map are other trails. There's 2 around Marine Science Drive, which a Huntsman have put in. They're 2 grass trails. There's the one where Joe's Point Road sign is, which of course is the Sunbury Shores Trail. We have the one at Pagan Point on the right-hand side. And then by Katie's Cove, there's a blue line. That is on the gravel bar, which surrounds the salt marsh there. It's been used by the public forever, but a little while back, Jesse Davies pointed out this is actually private land, and the owners were becoming concerned about liability. But she said we then included the gravel bar as part of our liability insurance, and Jesse gave us, I should say the O'Neill Farm Estate group gave us permission, gave permission for the public to use it, but they say they don't want any signs there. Benefits of the Green Whale Trail, health and social, it's well recognized that physical, mental, spiritual health, getting out and cycling, walking, especially in the natural environment, is good for us. The New Brunswick Medical Society in 2016 came out with a campaign called Top 3 in 10. New Brunswick apparently is one of the least healthy provinces in Canada, and they wanted, the campaign is to make it one of the top 3 over the next 10 years. They had a number of suggestions there, which are listed off: better food in schools and activity-related education; 2, better access and safer active transportation; and 6, access to community and outdoor infrastructure to support activities. I can actually count, but there was about 7 or 8, and I just wrote them down as they were. So that's why it goes 1, 2, and 6. A big feature of their writings, their articles, their suggestion was construction and use of outdoor trails, greenways. So the health benefits, the economic benefits. We always, when we talk to landowners, homeowners, when we're hoping to put the trail past, we always bring up this number. And it's widely written over the last 30 years that the value of homes on greenways can be increased from a few percent to up to 20% more than similar properties a few blocks away. This is great for the property owners, and although we don't shout it very loudly, it could be quite good for the municipalities too if their value of the homes goes up. Compared to ATV trails, the opposite effects occurs. There was a report from Nova Scotia not so very long ago which showed that property values could be diminished by up to 15% when the trails were being used by ATV drivers. This was related to the noise levels, and the louder the noise, the greater the percentage drop they were able to see. Perhaps in the future with electric ATVs, this may not be such a problem. The chief economic benefit, though, is to the communities is tourism, and these eye-watering numbers there. What the trails, cycle tourism, walking tourism will generate, and the numbers there. Quebec Route Vert, average cycle tourist spends 214 days, $214 a day when touring. The main number, 66.8 million, came out in a report in the early 2000s, but it was actually looking at 1998. And it was estimated then that cycle tourism generated $66.8 million. And the numbers in Vermont in 2009 were even higher, 1,400 jobs. I can't read that, but I think 41 million in wages and 83 million in total revenue. With the coming of electric bicycles, cycle tourism is going to expand. Long distance cycling, which at the moment is the province of the fit group in the middle years of life. Some of them are wearing spandex. With cycle tourism, more people are getting out. People who are okay with riding on the flat don't like going on hilly roads. Pedal-assisted electric bikes will allow them to get out much further, and the electric bike are becoming very, very much more popular and less expensive. This was obviously taken in the era of COVID, because the cyclist this is an electric tricycle, not an electric bike. She's wearing a COVID mask. The other thing in this picture that we showed to other people is that there is at least 2 and possibly 3 bridges coming from the adjacent properties, showing that because there is sometimes concern about security and so on when a trail goes past your property, these people are actually using the access onto the trail for their benefit. The other major facet of tourism is ecotourism, and there I've written that this is from a number of years back now, that 60 million Americans are bird watchers. And that was twice the number that play golf. A lot of these people have some disposable income and are willing to travel and make vacations around bird watching. One of the interesting numbers I came across fairly recently was the biggest demographic who are becoming bird watchers in Britain was young men between the ages of 16 and 25. And there was also something in San Francisco, which was called Birds and Booze, and there were pubs on top of bars on top of buildings, and you'd go and have a drink and take your binoculars and look at the peregrine falcons and so on that were flying around. So that is a major tourism market. So since we started the trails, we've been interested in looking upon it as a natural park. And here's a picture of a cute deer and the lupins. The trails have generated a lot of public enthusiasm, including naturalifying it, if that's a word. This is a picture of the Garden Club a year or 2 back, who was showing plants that they'd grown from seed for the trail. This, more recently, is the community college, who in conjunction with the tree committee were planting and protecting trees. The man standing at the back there is the chef from the community college, the two girls in the culinary arts group, and the chef is being very brave because the girl on top of the ladder has got this ginormous hammer above his head. This was a year or 2 back when we were trying to grow wildflowers at the end of the Queen Street extension. We were spreading wet newspapers down to stamp out the weeds, and then putting on the topsoil, which was back there. This was very successful. The Garden Club actually planted a whole bunch of different flowers, Monardia, the bee balms, and a variety of other things, which all did very well, and swamp milkweed. But then the lupins came in, which are quite beautiful. But now when we look at that area, it's just full of lupins, and the other things have disappeared. Apart from the practical help that we got from all these different community groups, obviously there was great enthusiasm for the trail, where people were willing to donate money, and this is one of the plaques that are at our kiosk at the trailhead. Everyone here donated at least $100 towards the trail. Unfortunately, we can't take donations at the moment. We used to do it through MB Trails, but MB Trails has become defunct. But we're hoping sometime to get charitable status and then go back to fundraising.
Mr. Johnson, I just want to
Hi.
let you know you're at a 2-minute warning.
Oh my God, I talk too much. Well, then let me go on. 2-minute warning. Coastal Link, this is where I should have been talking about. Coastal Link is this trail running from St. Stephen to St. John. It's mainly an active transport link. A number of the communities on the trail are actually on the main spine of the community, where others are connected to it by a spur. In St. Stephen, it connects up to the trail on the right, which is the East Coast Greenway, which runs from Key West to Calais, and in St. John, it connects up with the Trans-Canada Trail, which we all know about. Back to our trail. So initially, where am I going on, Lord? Go down. Sorry, oh, there I am anyway. So initially the coastal link was going to come into St. Andrews on the 127, go along Cornelia Street and out on the 127. The route is now being changed, and we're hoping that now so it really made us a spur on the link. Now we're hoping that the route will follow the Marine Science Drive, will follow our trail essentially, along Marine Science Drive, along Water Street, out along the green trails, which is the Van Horn Trail, and back onto Rose Lane. We have two options at Rose Lane, and we haven't quite organised them. So we either go left and back onto the 127, or we hopefully will go Plan A, which is along the Bar Road. How much time have I got left?
You're at your end, Mr. Johnson.
Sorry? I'm
You're
out?
at your end.
Am I? Okay. So our hope is that the town will accept the new route and make Coastal Link part of, or make our town trail part of the Coastal Link. It has great benefits in that we have much better exposure. Coastal Link is going to become associated with the Trans-Canada Trail. We can advertise that we're on the Trans-Canada Trail. It gives our opportunities for large, the possibility of large grants from Coastal Link and from the Trans-Canada Trail. I apologize for talking too much. I had lots more to say.
I'm just going to stop your sharing.
Right.
You're going to have to stop it on your end, so you have to shut down your share.
Okay.
So on your button in your share screen.
I can't, no, at the moment, you're dealing with an incompetent.
It's okay.
Wish my granddaughter was here.
Not a problem. It's on your actual Zoom. It's the share button.
Yeah, I've got too much in the way, actually.
Yeah.
On the bottom, I believe.
It is right on the bottom.
Yeah. I might disappear because I'm clearing so much off. No. I do not even see Zoom there, actually.
It'll be on your, it'll be on the bottom of your screen. It'll be a bar where you hit the share button originally.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting another 10 minutes, aren't I'm just seeing the side panel.
It's okay. I've got it here.
Yeah. Oh, now I've got it. I can leave. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Mayor Naish, what would you like to do? Would you like council to ask questions or move on to the next presentation?
Yeah, I think that we could ask a couple of questions if anybody does have a question at the moment. I don't know if our next presenter is set up yet.
Our next presenter is online.
Okay,
But if there's a question that wants to, council can have.
council, if there's anything that's pressing, you could ask.
Yeah,
Mr.
Your Worship, if I may. So thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for all your work. I know that this isn't something that is a 2-week project or a month project. This has been years of hard work by you and, I'll call it sortie, but it's a long legacy of people that have helped contribute to trails in St. Andrews. I guess my question is for understanding council and decision-making. I know there's a motion in here later this evening. This might be a question for staff as well. What's the main opposition from stakeholders on this proposed trail development? Like, who are people that might have concerns along the way? I know it cuts through the Algonquin Golf Course. I'm just wondering, before we make a decision, if there's anything council should be aware of.
I don't think there are no objections on our trail. I don't know. We're following primarily public roads, except for Cornelia Street, but which would not be involved in this. I mean, that's in our round town loop, but the trail that we're talking about just follows public roads: Marine Science Drive, Brandy Cove Road, Joe's Point Road, Water Street. And then it's back onto our trail. So I don't think there's any objection that I'm aware of anyway.
Through you, your worship.
Worship,
Yes,
I think that to follow up on what the mayor has said, and Mr. Johnson can jump in at any time. I don't think there's been any objections because I don't know if the public is fully aware of what's going on. And because I don't think there's been any public meetings to discuss this or to highlight what the route is or to hear any of those objections. And I think that perhaps might be the next step, is to have some form of public meetings so that we can hear more about what the public view is on all of these routes.
Councilor Grew, that sounds like when we get to the motion that's put forward tonight,
Yeah.
that we can have a further discussion of that. That seems like sensible advice to me, that we may want to defer this for a while until we have that kind of a consultation. But anyway, we'll discuss that when we deal with the motion. Thank you. Okay, again, thank you, Mr. Johnson. I appreciate your presentation, and we'll certainly be back to you at some point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nopper, can we move on to the second presentation?
Yep, we can. I just had Carolyn Davies on here. There's Carolyn. Carolyn, you have the floor to council and you have the ability to share your screen.
Right, so you're,
So hit the share screen button at the bottom of your Zoom
done?
and select your screen and you can share.
Well, seeing as it isn't in any of the boxes I have to share with, I have no idea how to get it. I'll get, can you do it?
Yeah, I can do it for you,
Sure.
Carolyn. Just give me 1 second. You'll just have to let me know when to move pages.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carolyn. Council, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you full screen it?
It went to full screen here on another screen. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Well, if everybody else has it full screen, that's okay.
Hold on, I have to do a new share here. Apologies for the technical, council. I'm not sure what's going on. I've got it shared on another screen here, Council. Give me one more second. Can you see it full, Council?
Yes,
Yes, now.
Thank you.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Paul. Thanks, Paul, and good evening, Your Worship and members of council. This is, I hope it's not the last time you'll see me on this subject. As some of you are well aware, we are looking at trying to update, renew our Passamaquoddy Lodge. If you want to go to the lodge, as you're aware, is a 60-bed facility. It's nearly 50 years old. It is showing its age, and we had decided, the board had decided a couple of years ago that maybe it was time to look at doing more individual rooms, having in fact all rooms individual rooms to provide the appropriate space, so that the residents would feel that they have the comforts of home, staff would have a safe environment to work in and look after, and family and visitors would be able to feel visit their loved ones in a more relaxed and comfortable setting. So we've done a fair bit of work on this to get to here. Part of it was stemming from the Age-Friendly Community Initiative, which started actually with board at Passamaquoddy Lodge, trying to look at how we better integrate ourselves in the community. We have done a fair bit of consultation. We've spoke to the province on many occasions about our need to provide individual rooms, more individual rooms. We had a draft proposal from an architectural company here in New Brunswick on how we could do that using the existing space. Having sent that to the Department of Social Development, their feedback was, why would we be renovating an aging infrastructure? Because once we renovated, we'd have a new part and we'd still have an aging infrastructure. And they recommended that we look at going new. So our thinking has had to change, and we've had to realize that we need to do things like look for space to build, design something that would meet what we were hoping to achieve 2 years ago, but also would meet what the COVID-19 pandemic has opened our eyes to in terms of providing a better facility that would protect our residents even more than they have been. And I would need to give a shout out right now to the staff at the lodge. Our residents have been well, our staff have been well, they have been well looked after. I think the staff are as frustrated as the residents and family members who can't get the people in to see their family members as much as possible, but that's all an aside, and this is one of the things we'd like to ensure doesn't happen again if there's another pandemic, that we'd have the facility to meet that response. We've also consulted with the Nursing Home Association to look at whether there's still a demand for a 60-bed facility in St. Andrews. There is. We're not looking to increase it, but we are looking to maintain a 60-bed facility. We want to keep the facility in St. Andrews. It does employ over 85 staff, which is an important, they're an important employer in the area. And the province to date has been listening. We do not have sufficient information to go to them yet to get approval, but they have been very receptive. So next slide there, Paul, please. What we are looking at is there are two sort of concepts when it comes to nursing homes. One is what we currently have, which is the neighborhood concept. So you have the long hallways and in rooms off those hallways. In our current facility, we have a shared spa, sort of shower and tub facility. What we would like to propose is going with a household facility, which would be more like a small house, which would accommodate 10 to 12 residents. Staff would, for the most part, be dedicated to that particular house. Whether it's an actual house or whether it's a hub and spokes, we don't know what the design's going to be. We don't know what how it would, would best suit whatever land we end up on. So that's remains to be seen, but that's what we'd like to do. If we were to have an outbreak of Norwalk or, heaven forbid, another COVID-19, and we had the household concept, we could shut down one household and that way, help keep the other residents, sorry, I just had a dog attack me, safe and healthy. Next one, Paul. In the household design, or what we're going for, whether it's whatever the design is, because of course we do have to get approval from the province, we want, as I mentioned, 60 private rooms with private bathrooms. So the bathrooms would be fully self-contained like you have in your current, most of us have in our current homes. They'd have their own bathtub, they'd have a shower stall, whichever the facility is, minimizing spread of germs, allowing people to have a sense of privacy and their own private space. In the household, we also would have a kitchen facility, which would allow us hopefully to maybe feed people when they want to be fed, rather than say everybody has to have breakfast at 7 o'clock. Now, as somebody who doesn't like to eat first thing when I get up in the morning, that would appeal to somebody like me. So, to try and cater more, and we'd also have allow, what the evidence is showing us is that when you do that, people eat better. So there's one individual who said she had been losing weight and was not feeling well, had no energy. And when she went into this small household venue and she started to be able to eat when she wanted to eat and the like, she was eating better, eating more, and her whole health improved. They would have probably a laundry facility, individual laundry facilities. So again, you're not doing laundry from 60 individual rooms in one facility. It would be done from 10 rooms or 12 rooms in one facility. So again, keeping the health of both residents and the staff and visitors paramount. As well as they'd have the dining and living area. It would also include, as we have now, access to the outdoors so that people could get out and see this fabulous place we live in. We'd like to include a community gathering space, whether that would be for also the residents, but maybe have an additional gathering space where we could have people who are having to relearn how to cook. They could come in and maybe there'd be a kitchen facility and somebody could talk them through making some basic recipes. Or you could have meetings, or maybe even have I don't know whether calling it an adult day program, but something to the effect where people could come and mingle with others and socialize and not be less isolated. So that's what we're looking at. Next slide, Paul, please. We've consulted with stakeholders. We've obviously spoken to the province. We've spoken to the Nursing Home Association. We've spoken to architects. We've spoken to other nursing homes. We visited other nursing homes to see what they look like. We've talked to an organization based out of the States called the Greenhouse Project, which is a proponent. They initiated this small household concept, and they have a wealth of information that they have been sharing with us. So that has been tremendous. We've looked at operating models, how this would work, whether we'd have to change our workforce makeup, which we wouldn't. We've looked at whether we could partner with an entity like the Passamaquoddy Early Education Group and have the intergenerational element with our new facility. We've talked to Huntsman about whether they want there to be sort of any chance of a partnership with them. We've spoken to the town, obviously, and we've been approached by another couple of other organizations about potential land. And we're now at the point where we need to engage an architect who will come up with a conceptual model that we could price out, and would also have engineers do visits on the land to see what would best work for the model we're proposing. We've also spoken to a number of people about repurposing our current facility. And I know that we've spoken to the mayor and deputy mayor about possibly having it available, not run by Passamaquoddy Lodge, but by somebody else, as to provide accommodation, whether it's for students attending the community college, whether it's for people coming to work here in the summer, whether it's people coming to stay at, to take a course at Huntsman. But I think we can repurpose it and maybe answer some of the needs of the community when the age-friendly community initiative, where they identified affordable housing as a real concern. And to go back to when we had a discussion the other day with the people at Greenhouse Project, they were telling one of the individuals has 35 facilities in Arkansas, and he said with all the issue of the pandemic, they only had COVID-19 in one of the houses, not one of the facilities, one of the houses. So each facility would be at a minimum of 6 houses. So it sort of is reinforcing our plea to that we'll make to the province to allow us to go this way. It might be a little more expensive to construct, we don't know. But I think it's, in the long term, that's where we need to go. So what we're asking of you is to support this, so we can tell the province that the town is aware of what we're doing, supports us, and look at a potential financial contribution. Now, I know we've talked about town land. I recognize that's a financial contribution. I don't know, of course, I've got my hand out for any infrastructure money that might fall between the cracks and we can pick up. So that's really where we're here in front of you today. We do not have the full financial picture yet, because we need the conceptual drawings and the site location choice of site. But once we have that, we will also know what this should cost and be able to give you a more fulsome picture.
Thank you, Caroline. Council, questions? Councilor Akaji.
Do you have, like you say, you're going to repurpose the old building, so do you have new land that you have an idea of where it's going to go, or are you looking for land?
We have a couple of options. There is some town land, I understand. And I mean, I Google Earthed it, but I haven't walked it. Huntsman has some land, and we've been approached by a couple of private citizens about some land also. So what we need to, that's why we need this architect to tell us whether any of this land suits, and what the cost of that would be if we had to blast out, get a foundation in. That increases the cost. If they have to bring sewage and water to it, that increases the cost. If we can get it without a lot of that helps us in terms of our long-term financial planning.
Any other questions, Council?
Your worship, just more of a comment. Just thanks for the presentation tonight, Caroline. I look forward to this motion later tonight, and hopefully it passes by council and we can start meeting to find out how we make this project become a reality, because it really will make us a stronger community. You look at our town being an aging population, and the people that are actually choosing to buy and build homes here are a little bit later in their careers. To know that they actually have a facility in the community that they can stay in when that time comes, it certainly strengthens our community. I look forward to talking about what the current Passamaquoddy Lodge could look like. So thank you very much, and I do look forward to this motion later.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I'd just like to say something, Mayor.
Yeah,
I'd like to thank Carolyn and her group for spearheading this and moving ahead with it, because it's very needed. I think people really do want to have private rooms with private bathrooms, and health-wise, germ-wise and stuff, it's a much safer, and I think it's the wave of the future. And I'd like to say, anybody that's lucky enough to live in it, to have these facilities is fortunate, and I thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Councillor Bishop. Yeah, I guess if there are no other comments, thank you, Caroline. We very much appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Through you,
Thank
Your
you.
Worship. Hold on.
Your Worship, can I ask a quick question?
Thank
I know a lot of questions people ask Ms. Davies is timeline for this, and I know you're pretty early in the concept stage, but do you have a timeline, like within the next 5 years, or is it more, is it less?
Okay, you're talking to Miss Impatience, so factor that into my answer. I'd like it to start tomorrow. We won't be able to go to the province to get their okay until early fall, is my best guesstimate. And then we would like to start, if possible, next year. And it'll take a couple of years to build the facility, but I think the sooner we can get our people into a more home-like, healthier, safer environment, the better I'll feel. And I know the board is behind this 100%, so they also would like to. So that's our time frame. There obviously could be hiccups in terms of if the price is higher than the province wants to pay, then we'll have to do some homework there.
Appreciate it, but thank you for the answer and your candor.
Okay, thank you. We move on then. Thank you, Caroline.
Okay.
Mayor Nace, you're good to move to minutes.
Okay, we will now move to the minutes of previous meetings. Look at, so we will go first. I will be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting of council on June the 1st, 2020. Can I have a motion to that effect, please?
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop, and a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any questions about those minutes? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. We'll now move to the minutes of the regular council meeting on June the 1st, 2020. Can I have a motion, please, for that?
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Akaji, and a seconder.
I'll second.
Thank you. If there aren't any questions, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are approved as well. We'll now move to the special meeting of council on June the 8th, 2020.
Through you, Your Worship, I just want to point out, I did make a slight error on the top of the next 3 minutes in regards to special meetings of council. They do say regular council meeting, but will be changed for the accurate minutes. So please note that that will be changed.
Alrighty, thank you, Mr. Knopper. So did we get a seconder for that? I guess we did.
You need a motion. Nobody did.
Sorry, motion for that, please.
Also move.
Okay, Deputy Mayor moved and Councillor Bishop seconded. If there aren't any questions, all in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those are also approved. Now we will move to the minutes of the special meeting of June 15th, 2020. Motion, please.
Also move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bishop. The seconder,
Councillor Groot.
Councillor Groot, thank you. If there aren't any questions, all in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are also approved. Now we will move to the special meeting of council on let's see, June 22nd. Thank you.
I'll move.
Thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second, Councilor Lucio.
Thank you. All right, any questions? If not, all in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, then those minutes are also approved. And finally, we will move to the minutes of the June 22nd council committee meeting. Motion, please.
Councillor Groot.
Councillor Groot, thank you. And a seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison, welcome. All right, all in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, those minutes are also approved, and that completes the approval of minutes. We will now move to staff reports, and I will ask our Chief Administrative Officer to read his monthly report. Mr. Spear?
Thank you, Worship. And I apologize to everyone who's watching and council. It's a 4-page report, so it'll take me a bit, but I'll try to go through it without going a million miles an hour. I would like to thank council for the ability to update you, as well as the general public, on the ongoing initiatives and operations of the town of St. Andrews. Under the heading of council, one of the priorities of council is the Water Street pilot project, which began on June 26th. They were responding to concerns from the business community on the challenges they'll be facing due to closed borders and the protocols required for COVID-19. They have worked closely with staff, the Chamber of Commerce, the BIA, and local citizens to determine the best approach to this project. They recognize the fears of many related to having the usual influx of tourists into the town, but early indications are that the visitation numbers are substantially lower than the last few years. Citizens can assist business owners by purchasing from the retailers and attending the eateries of St. Andrews. Another economic initiative that council supported was the elimination of the passenger fee charged to the tour boat operators based on the number of trips. Council understands the challenges faced by them and responded to assist them to operate this summer. Before council tonight is a motion to accept the official St. Andrews segment of the Coastal Link Trail. This will connect our town to the rest of the American East Coast and the rest of Canada on an internationally recognized bicycling route. Studies have shown that there are many tourists who look for an active vacation that includes walking and/or biking trails. Even now, we see many tourists who may drive to St. Andrews to use our trails for their enjoyment. Council realizes that many residents use the trail system as well for 3 of the 4 seasons. It's a project that will benefit generations to come, both visitors and those who call our community home. We are also continuing with the municipal plan process and planning to complete it by early October, or at least hoping. There will be several community input sessions as well as public meetings for council to debate this roadmap for the community for the next 10 years. Staff are working on a communication plan to ensure that residents are aware of any meetings regarding this process. At the beginning of the meeting, we had a presentation from the board of the Passamaquoddy Lodge on a new and exciting initiative to construct a nursing home within the next few years. They are requesting support from council by way of consideration of the use of municipal property. Under administrative, with the onset of late spring, the return of summer residents and lifting of restrictions, June has been a very busy month for staff. The Water Street pilot project was an initiative brought forward, planned, and executed in a 5-week window, thanks to the hard work and dedication of the community, business community, council, and staff. Council has empowered staff to make changes on the fly if needed and have committed to reviewing the success of the project after July to see if they should revert to allowing parking on the front street again. There have been a lot of opinions coming in through Facebook, email, and telephone, but I'm asking that everyone be patient as we would like to allow a few weeks to gather data and evaluate this project. We've also had comments on wharf parking as well as the need for improved accessible parking in the downtown. We take all comments seriously and review them for possible action. I also wish to express thanks for the various landowners who have worked with us to establish additional parking near the historical business district. The Age-Friendly Community Committee is hiring a senior resource coordinator for several weeks this summer to explore available resources and opportunities that can be used over the next several years. This will allow us to increase the services available to our seniors while accessing external funding to encourage an active lifestyle for our mature residents. The Tourism Accommodation Levy Board has had its first series of meetings to establish its bylaws, as well as set up subcommittees to provide recommendations on what avenues to invest the funds in marketing, promotions, or events. It is a collaboration of the tourism community, council, and municipal staff. With the struggles this year, the funds will be significantly lower than expected, which will reduce the impact next year as well. However, this is still a positive initiative that will provide opportunities for increased promotion for the foreseeable future. The Cultural Asset Committee met in June with the CAO, attending as the staff representative. Their top priority is for this council to approve a long-term plan for the courthouse and the jail. They are reviewing the material that came from the initial public consultation in 2017 and will provide follow-up correspondence back to council over the next couple of months. Council would like to congratulate the class of 2020 at both Sir James Dunn Academy and the St. Andrews campus of the New Brunswick Community College for this milestone, albeit under unusual circumstances. We also wish to thank the RCMP and Public Works staff for their participation in aiding the drive-by receiving line to ensure the flow of traffic while allowing the high school students to celebrate this important occasion. With the pandemic restrictions slowly lifted, all staff have been working hard to prepare the town for summer activities for the community. Public Works is operating with a smaller staff in order to manage costs during this difficult time, but have taken on many projects. They aided the graduating class by installing banners in recognition of this milestone, removed them, and installed the provincial and Canadian flags along Reed Avenue and Harriet Street. They created a new park at 184 Water Street with picnic tables, planters, as well as additional parking. Work with some of the local landowners to set up additional parking in the downtown core, and got up really early on June 26th to set up the signs and barricades for the pilot project. This is in addition to the usual activities of maintaining the appearance and safety of the town. The fire department responded to 10 calls this month, including 6 incidents related to forest fires or brush fires. As of the writing of this report, the forest fire index is an extreme with a fire ban province-wide. We would ask everyone to go to the New Brunswick Forest Watch website before having any type of fire, even with within a CCA-approved device. The fire department trained for 61 man-hours despite the challenges related to minimal access related to COVID. The employees of the water and sewer department have been very busy on several projects related to upgrades throughout the town. They have also been responding to calls related to house sales, water shutoffs, and going through the testing protocols. Our partners at the Regional Service Commission have been working with us through the municipal plan, as well as several building inspection and development permit issues. It should be noted that in the first 6 months of this year, there have been $2.2 million in construction in town compared to only $1.9 million in the same period last year. So most in despite of COVID-19. Our arena manager, Tim Sharkey, has been busy performing routine maintenance at the arena, being part of the sanitation team for Centennial and Indian Point Parks, and assisting subcontractors related to the Wellness Center project. The skate park and basketball courts have been open at the youth center, are being sanitized daily. We have also gotten word that the school district will be opening the community playground effective July 2nd, which, as looking today, it is being well used. One item of note, our youth center coordinator, Debbie, one benefit of hers having on the sanitation team is she is a downtown ambassador, tour guide, and greeter for the town. The Ross Memorial Library reopened on June 9th under strict restrictions, including no children's program, only 2 adults in the building besides staff, and all electronic equipment has been put up for now. We appreciate the work of the staff there, the availability of the facility, and its collection. The staff of the Ross Memorial Museum are excited about a new exhibit for this year. Edward Bannister was the only nationally recognized Black artist from the 19th century whose roots are here in St. Andrews. He went on to international prominence, including buildings being named after him on the University of Rhode Island's campus. Please be sure to drop by the museum this summer to learn more and see an example of his work. Before council tonight is a motion to designate the commissionaires as assistant bylaw enforcement officers for the summer. Their primary purpose is to assist individuals looking for parking and to provide data on the parking situation within the town. However, if need be, they are authorized to issue tickets to enforce our bylaws. Under capital projects, we have been able to continue with the construction projects as they were deemed an essential service since the early days of the state of emergency. An update of the key projects include the Wellness Center at the arena is moving along well. The inner offices are starting to take shape, and we're still hoping for completion by this October. The concrete reservoir was relined in April. This means it'll be in service for another 15 or more years. The final phase of the Edward Street infrastructure replacement is completed. There should be a final seal coat of asphalt placed next year to finalize 5 years worth of work along that stretch of road. The fire department received an air compressor that allowed them to refill their SCBA equipment instead of going to St. Stephen. This is especially important during a structure fire. We have upgraded the SCADA systems for both the water and sanitary sewer systems. This gives us real-time information, including early warning indicators and the ability to adjust some of our equipment remotely. One other notable project was the Park at 184 Water Street. Our team did an incredible job to upgrade the space for the summer. We should thank Deborah Firestorm and Chris Gowan for its use. And as a conclusion, with the uncertainty related to the pandemic and changes instituted with the Water Street pilot project, I realize that many people are on edge and have strong opinions on some of the decisions of your local government. Most projects are initiated through community suggestions or involvement. Council and staff are working with the best intention of the whole community, although individuals or specific individuals could be negatively affected. Always bring your concerns forward and they will be considered. We just ask that you be polite as we teach you professionally to address your concerns as we execute our duties for the citizens and council of the town of St. Andrews. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Spear, for your extensive report. Council, do you have any questions of Mr. Spear?
Left them in on one, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. I guess now we move forward to have maybe any comments on the summary for budget.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as council knows, on May the 11th, you approved a secondary budget related to COVID and all the changes that were brought forward because of that. And that has been instigated into the monthly reports for now. As you can see, revenue is slightly up in the general operating fund, but our expenses are considerably down. We'll keep an eye on that and have a better update in the fall. A lot of those are related to timing, that some of these projects haven't gotten started, but we'll see how that goes. And capital is underway, and actually most of our capital projects will be completed by the end of July. So we'll have a good understanding of how our overall capital program went for this current year. Only thing that's a kind of is the water and sewer project, of course, is the revenue, and our revenue for the spring was about where we thought it would be, but for the fall we're just have to wait and see attitude because of the COVID-19. The one thing that's good, I guess, if you will, is that it's been a dry spring and summer so far, so you should be up, which isn't necessarily good environmentally, but is good for the utility department's revenues. So we'll probably be into October, November before we get a really good idea of where this department finally ends up as far as total revenue projections.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Councillor, any questions of Mr. Spear on the budget update? All right, if not, I will look for a motion to approve all of the staff reports, which you've had the opportunity to review as part of our council package. Can I have a motion for that, please?
Also move.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop, and a seconder.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the staff reports, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those reports are approved. So we will now move on to the next segment. We'll move on to the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions. And we'll move to finance and administration. Councillor Bishop.
Thank you. The first item is FA 200403 dated June 17th, 2020. And the subject is Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews Campground wage reduction request. And the background is in May 2020, staff had an informal discussion with representatives of the Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews regarding the campground rental fee for 2020 and COVID-19. During this discussion, staff noted that for the council to review the rental fee rates, a formal letter would need to be provided to the council. On June 17th, 2020, the town of St. Andrews received a formal letter from Joe Harrison, president of the Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews, for council to review the rental fee for 2020 due to COVID-19. Provided to council is a copy of the letter and a breakdown of financials for the campground. It was suggested that council review the financials after the campground season has been completed to assess the assistance to provide to the Kiwanis Club of St. Andrews. And the motion is that council moved to defer the Kiwanis Club campground rental rate payment for the 2020 season due to COVID-19 to November 1st, 2020.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please? And I think what I think we meant to say was to defer the assessment until November the 1st, but a seconder, please.
Dara's muted. I'll second that, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Council?
So we're just waiting until November 1st when they get all their ducks in a row. They get their season finished and then they'll give us an update of how the season went, correct?
Correct, Councillor Bishop.
Thank you.
Councillor Grew, Your Worship.
Sorry, Councillor Grew, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Although the Local Governance Act states that members of service clubs that derive a benefit from the municipality are not in a conflict of interest, I feel I'll be abstaining from participation in the debate and voting on this issue because I am a member of the Kiwanis Club, and it's kind of obvious. Even though the Local Governance Act says I'm not in conflict, I would prefer to be out of this and just abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Grew. That's up to your own personal comfort, so I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, Council, there are no other questions. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is carried. Thank you, Council.
Okay, the next item, Mayor, I'll go ahead.
Yes.
FA 200405C dated June 3rd, 2020. The subject is amendment number A-6 to bylaw number 18-04, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting remuneration of members of the town council. This is the third and final reading. The background. In 2019, the town of St. Andrews Council directed staff to investigate a per-hour stipend for coverage of care services for council members during events and official functions. Staff researched remuneration bylaws for municipalities across Canada. From the review of the bylaws, municipalities offer a range of stipend for care coverage for babysitting, but not for additional care coverage. The motion timeline, the motion 160, May 2020 was the first reading. Motion 195, June 2020 was the second reading. And note, a public hearing of objections is not needed as this change is not significant to the bylaw. The motion is that leave be granted to move to third reading.
That's correct.
Yeah, to third reading of amendment number A-6 to bylaw number 18-04, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting remuneration of members of town council.
Could I have a seconder for that motion, please?
Councillor Gouchel would like to second, please.
Thank you, Councillor Goumichel. Comments, council? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I will now read the amendment for the third and final time. It's quite short, so I'll read the entire thing. Amendment number A-6 to bylaw number 18-04, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting remuneration of members of the town council. Be it enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews that bylaw number 18-04, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting remuneration of members of the town council is hereby amended as follows. 1, by adding a new paragraph 2.6, $15 per hour to a maximum of $75 per occurrence will be provided for care oversight coverage incurred by a council member while attending a town of St. Andrews official function. A receipt is required for reimbursement. Read for the third time on the 6th day of July 2020. Thank you, council. That is now enacted.
Thank you. Shall I go on to the third motion?
Yes.
Thank you. FA 200409, dated June 17th, 2020. The subject is amendment A-9 to bylaw number 19-07, a bylaw relating to water systems, water rates, wastewater systems, and wastewater rates. First reading. The background is several properties in town have water and sewer services, but because the buildings have either been demolished or abandoned, there has been no water consumption for several years. The practice of the town has been to bill the minimum fee for these services as stated in the current water and sewer bylaw. There have been requests from several landowners to reconsider this practice. Provided is a draft amendment to Section 5. The motion is that council moves to grant leave for first reading of Amendment A-9 to bylaw 19-07, a bylaw relating to water systems, water rates, wastewater systems, and wastewater rates.
Could I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Harrison. Questions, council? Right, if there are no questions, I will then call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I will read the amendment for the first time. This is amendment number A-9 to bylaw number 19-07, a bylaw relating to water systems, water rates, wastewater systems, and wastewater rates. Be it enacted by the Council of the Town of St. Andrews that bylaw number 19-07, a bylaw relating to water systems, water rates, wastewater systems, and wastewater rates is hereby amended as follows. Number 1, by adding to section 5 with the following. 5, obligations of the owner. H, in the event of the demolition of the primary structure at a service location, a homeowner can request, after paying applicable fees, to have the water disconnected. The town will prorate any future billings based on the disconnection and eventual reconnection of the service. And that's read for the first time the 6th day of July, 2020.
Thank you. The next item, FA 200408, dated June 17th, 2020. The subject is TSA 2020-13 half-ton 4x4 regular cab truck reissue. The background is within the 2020 utility capital budget, council allowed $52,000 before HST towards the purchase of a replacement truck for the water and sewer technician. The operator currently drives a 12-year-old vehicle that was due for replacement in 2018. Upon council awarding the tender on May 11th, staff were notified by the bidder that the vehicle was no longer available in the color specified in the tender, and the award was canceled. Therefore, staff have reissued the tender, allowing for a white vehicle, which closed on Friday, June 17th, 2020. The final cost dropped $3,000 since that time. And here's the motion. I move that tender TSA 2020-13 half-ton 4x4 regular cab truck be awarded to Downey Ford Sales Limited in the amount of $38,896 plus HST.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I second that.
Thank you, Councillor Akaji. Questions, Council?
It's always good when the tender price drops.
Yeah.
If someone
Nice to
asks,
get a deal.
if someone asks why it's white, it's because it saved us $14,000.
Yeah, right, exactly. Perfect. Good answer, Deb.
14,000 or 3,000?
Well, if you look at what we budgeted,
Yeah.
That's true.
Saved us a lot.
All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is approved.
Okay, the next item, FA 200605, dated June 17th, 2020. The subject is lift arm gate for the entrance to the wharf. The background. Under the new COVID-19 budget passed by council on June 2nd, 2020, funding was set aside to either hire additional staff for the wharf or to install a lift gate to manage vehicular traffic. The staff have reviewed both options through quoting and have determined that a lift gate would be the best course of action both in the short and long term. The lift gate can be operated using a fob system to allow permitted vehicles onto the wharf. Additionally, the wharfinger will have a remote ability to open and close the gate from a distance. This will allow staff to continue managing the wharf while being able to service the gate for vehicle access. Although preferred by staff as a measure of public safety, many residents have expressed concern about the lack of access for non-users. The motion is that council move to approve the purchase of a lift gate system for the entrance of the wharf from Fundy Fencing Limited at a cost of $11,933 plus HST.
Do I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second Councillor Gumshoe.
Thank you, Councillor Gumshoe. Questions, council, of the motion?
Yeah, Your Worship. I was wondering if we could have a bit of a conversation around this motion. It's we've heard from some members of the public, so I think it's important to kind of go over kind of why this is happening. So first and foremost, just clarity question for me is, the understanding is this, although this lift gate is permanent, the reason that'll be down now is because of COVID, and when COVID is over, it'll be lifted up and things will resume as normal. Is that correct?
That wouldn't be the intention. I wouldn't be investing in a long-term asset if that was the case. The reality is COVID is the instigator, being that, you know, on a walk there last week, there was 2 groups coming in. I was part of one group heading out, and there's another group coming in. Then the vehicle came down and everybody had to kind of herd over to one side. So without the lift gate, or, you know, controlled access, I mean, it's at the lift gate, without controlled access on the wharf, it prevents challenges for people to work there individually or to get, you know, do social distancing. But another common problem we have out there is that it's always been a safety hazard, meaning people come out and go. In a normal season, there's dozens of people walking up and down the wharf every minute. There's people cutting across back and forth, walking 5 deep, even though we have it lined on one side to keep pedestrians on the right-hand side going out. People are spread across the wharf, and we have traffic going. And then at the pier of the wharf, the pier head where the parking is, there was very limited space to do turnarounds and things. And so it does create a safety hazard. But again, COVID was the instigator. There's been a long time talk about doing this. We also, as you know, have a 50-year-old portion of the wharf that is under, going to be going through some changes over the next 5 years. And this would also help in that by reducing some of the wear and tear that vehicular traffic has on that. But nonetheless, we have operated since we've owned it without a gate up there. And it's whatever direction council wants to go, although the recommendation of staff is still to have that gate. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Councillors, any other comments? Councillor Groop?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few comments on this. There have been a number of letters to mayor and council, and all of them have been opposed to this measure. And some of them have raised some very good points. I took note of some of the objections, and I actually went down and had a look at the wharf, and I have noticed that the wharf has been packed all week long with vehicles. Even though there's gates and barricades there, I think that's a problem. To me, the price of $12,000 for a COVID-19 measure is very high, especially when we were arguing about $2,500 for a parking lot. The other thing is, and I don't think this has been considered, is restricting access to the wharf, especially for those with accessibility issues. And many of our people in this community are disabled, and the only way they can go to the wharf is by vehicle. And that doesn't seem to be a very age-friendly thing to do. And then finally, the last point I'd like to make is that considering that the taxpayers of St. Andrews pay about 45% of the wharf costs, I don't think it seems unfair to restrict their access to the wharf and just have it for users. And many of these users are people that do not pay taxes in St. Andrews. They come in, do their business, make their money, and then leave. And what we're doing is we're keeping the tax-paying public who is paying for this wharf by restricting their access to the wharf. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Groop.
Could I get some clarification on something? I thought the fees we brought in last year paid 100% of the maintenance of the wharf, like the yearly cost.
It pays close to the total operations cost, not including any debt servicing fees.
Right, right.
Your Worship, just on the cost for this gate. My understanding, the reason we considered it is originally it was proposed that we had a commissionaire stand at the wharf for the entire summer for, I think it was close to $10,000. That number might ring in my, maybe I'm wrong, but the thought, it was higher. So the thought behind this, I thought, was to put the gate in versus have someone stand there all year, and then we have it for future years. Say we have construction on the wharf when we do the improvements, we can actually limit access. Say there's a storm coming in that night, we could limit access. If there's any integrity issues that come up, we could limit access. So I thought there was merit in considering having an option that we could lift it up if we didn't need it, but then put it back down, versus pay a commissioner all summer to stand there and move a gate and have nothing to show for it at the end to do the same job. So that's why I put some consideration into this. But what I wasn't putting consideration into is making a permanent decision on stopping traffic down the wharf. We do have a wharf board in place that I think it would be pretty disrespectful for this council to implement a permanent change on users without consulting with them first and hearing the opinions from all of the user groups. So I don't want to defeat this because it made more sense than paying a commissioner, but in the same sense, by approving this, I certainly don't want it to say that it's that way forever. Do you know what I mean? Like, you pay for it, you've got it if you ever need it, right? So it's just, I don't know.
We can always change policy.
We do a friendly amendment.
So I guess by clarifying is, so right now it's just an on-manned or woman gate that is just at the end of the wharf, and it's on kind of know if you can cross or not. It's almost like a trust gate. Is that correct right now, that people can move it if they wish? Is that part of the problem?
That's correct, that we've, the Wharfinger enforces that only current users use the gate and through scheduled appointments to try to minimize the traffic out there as opposed, but even with the gate, it would still be that way, that we'd ask users to give us advance notice just to try to minimize the amount of traffic that's out on the wharf.
Your Worship, just one point is that by design, this gate operates on a FOB system, so only people with card access can get access to the wharf. So it's inherent in the design. If you were putting in a gate that would, open when cars approach the gate with some sort of a motion sensor, that would be different. But we're doing a card-based system, which by its very design restricts access to those people that have cards. So I think we have to be very clear what this is, because we can delude ourselves saying the gate will be open next year, no problem, but it's a gate and it's going to be closed.
Well,
I think that's my sense.
If I could add on to that, Councillor Grew. So do we know if this is a gate that can be left open and then we can just close it and activate the fob system, or is this something that we doesn't have that ability? Because I would be very hesitant to vote in favor for that if that was the case. I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight on permanently not allowing. There's a lot of senior citizens that are paying tax dollars. The only way they can get to that wharf is by car. And I'm really hesitant to make that decision tonight. But with that being said, it's better to have this for when we're doing construction than paying a commissioner for 1 year, right? If you can open it up and leave it up. And to be honest, the opening and leaving it up probably won't be this council's decision is the other thing. It'll probably be a new council, right? So I'm just wondering if we know if it can be left open, or does it have to be with the fob only?
It could be lifted permanently or for seasonal, but I guess it goes back to if council doesn't feel that this isn't a good 1 year solution, that if you feel it's just a temporary solution, then we'll probably kind of go with the honor system and fight with that over the next couple of months, because that's all we're talking about, and take the lift gate off the table if council's not comfortable with that. And staff understands that, but the thought was that this would be a longer term solution to control traffic. But if you want to rethink this, we can move it forward to budget consideration and get some more input from either the wharf board or the community at large.
I think we really should look into it, because I think it is a big safety issue. Because I love walking down there, and the last few years, the amount of cars, people just wanting to go park there and look, like there were a lot of cars coming and going, and I think that's a really big town asset. That, if people do have issues with mobility, that there are other ways to accommodate them, whether it be wheelchairs or other ways to get people to the end of the wharf. Whereas we don't need a steady flow of traffic up and down that wharf. I think voters, whether recreational or whoever, maybe they should be at drop-off zones, whatever. But just people wanting to go for a Sunday drive possibly we should find other ways to get them to the end of the wharf.
And then there's the
Lordship, I'd agree with Councillor Harrison's comments and also with the deputy mayor. Rather than pay someone $10,000 to be a commissioner at the wharf, it was kind of a long-term infrastructure thing, putting a gate down there, and also the fobs would give us data on who's using the wharf. I didn't realize we'd only be getting 50 fobs. I thought we'd anybody who paid their wharf fee would get a fob and be able to come and go as long as they paid their fee, they get a fob, like going to the gym or whatever.
Well, the fobs are easily to order, Councillor. There's be another couple of $100 to double that order.
Right. So when you pay, you get your fob, you come and go, and there was some discussion about how we could better accommodate the recreational boaters with a couple of spots, or 1 or 2 spots for them. So again, paying a commissionaire seems to be a short-sighted thing, whereas putting the gate is more part of a long-term vision of the wharf, and of course a lot of that vision has to come from the wharf board itself, and some of the people who have written in letters of concern can certainly offer to sit on that wharf board. So I think it's a good long-term investment.
Mr. Spear, could you comment on, I know one of the past year's problems where we ended up with all kinds of people parked permanently out on the wharf because there was no gate. So people go into town, go out for supper, and they drive their car out there and park it there. And there were some cars parked there just by visitors overnight because parking was at a premium. Is that still an issue? And would this gate help in that regard?
It's a bit of an issue, Your Worship, and it's a two-pronged approach. The gate will help a little bit because it'll eliminate some of the casual people. So people that aren't residents, say coming in for supper or something, just using the wharf as a long-term parking spot. But we still have a bit of a problem where you'll get a whole bunch of people parking out there that are workers, that go out and use up the spaces for the whole day. So we've noticed that in the last couple of days and had to address that. So we're trying to look at it over and, maybe doing limited parking out there for shorter time. So some of the some of the pleasure boaters could, say, bring their car in for the day, go out sailing, come back at supper time and then go in. So have arranged parking and stuff. But all of this is kind of contingent on being able to control the flow of traffic down the wharf as best we can. And so the gate would go a long ways in that. One other possible solution, and I know some of the residents still won't like this, is though after a certain hour at night, like 7 o'clock, we could probably lift the gate permanently, say when the wharfinger leaves, and that would give people nighttime access to the general public when most of the traffic is gone for the day, so it's much safer. Most of the tour boats, especially this year, are already in, and so they won't have that heavy flow of pedestrian traffic going down. And so you'd have the gate, then at, between the hours of 7 p.m. and 6 a.m., it'd be wide open, and in the morning, it would be engaged again to control the flow of traffic up and down the wharf.
And Mr. Spear, just for clarification, I just wanted to make sure we didn't misrepresent something here. Even if this gate is installed to prevent vehicular traffic, pedestrians will have access all of the time to the wharf, and people on bicycles and people pushing strollers and whatnot, they won't be restricted in any way if the gate is down, correct?
Absolutely. And we've had, signs out all summer saying pedestrian traffic is still welcome. It's just trying to control the flow of vehicular traffic going up and down the wharf.
Your Worship?
Yes, Councilor.
Just wanted to echo something that the Deputy Mayor has said, and I think it's important, is we do have a wharf board, and if we're going to make a major change like this without consulting the wharf board, without even talking to them, I suspect the members of the wharf board are just going to say, what are we here for? If you're just going to do these things without even talking to us, without getting our opinion. I think we need to consult with them, get their input so they can talk to the pleasure boaters, they can talk to the tour boat operators, they can talk to a wide variety of constituents before we make a major decision.
Your Worship,
I thought Councillor Gumashal said this was in the consultant's report that they had given to us. maybe I'm wrong on that.
I don't recall if specifically there was a mention of putting a gate. It does talk in the consultant's report, though, about what an asset the wharf is, how many visitors it gets each year. I don't have the report right in front of me, but it's good reading, and it certainly gives you pause to consider how the wharf does generate a lot of economic activity, and certainly, you know, people taking a drive down there isn't necessarily part of that. It's people coming and either going out whale watching or whatever the case might be, having a safe experience on the wharf. And all that aside, 10 grand for a commissionaire versus 12,000 for a gate that could be used now and into the future. I don't understand why there's so much debate around this.
Thank you, Councilor Michelle. Deputy Mayor Henderson.
I'll actually formally move that we table this motion. I wouldn't want to defeat it. If they determine that the gate they have now becomes a problem or people are disrespecting it, we may have to implement it, but I would like to table this motion and ask that we refer it to the Wharf Board to get their feedback on the impacts of users. And I'd like to also make sure that there's some type of free at large person at the meeting that likes to walk down the wharf, so they have an opinion at the meeting as well. I think we need to consult with the Wharf Board, because if I was on the Wharf Board, we made this decision without consulting with them, I would probably resign. So I move that we table it, again, not defeat it, in case we do need to bring it in, and then we can move on to the next motion.
Does the board have a chair right now?
No, it does not, because the chair resigned recently and they haven't had a meeting since to appoint another chair.
So like, I'm not sure that's really the best move at this point.
The chair resigned due to lack of communication between town council staff and them. I think this is a positive message that we do plan to communicate with them. I think if anything, it gives us more reason why we should be doing this personally. So I believe I moved, and I think I saw Councillor Grew second it.
Yeah, I second the motion from the.
Do you need a seconder?
Oh, we have a seconder. It's a question of calling the question.
That motion is tabled.
Any other comments, Council? I will put this forward as a motion.
Do we need to take a vote on tabling it?
Yes, we'll take a vote on tabling. So I'll call the question for the motion, Deputy Mayor's motion to table this for future and refer to the Wharf Board or Wharf Advisory Committee, more properly. I'll call the question. All in favor of tabling this motion, the original motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Nays?
Nay.
Aye.
We're looking for nays. Who voted
I voted nay.
nay? Nay. That's 2. Councillor Akaji, what was your vote?
Yes. Yes, to go to what, to table it.
Okay, so
Mine's yes to table it.
okay, so that's 4-2. So we will table this. Thank you, Council.
Okay, Councillor Grew is next.
Okay. The fun and exciting stuff. Okay, number PS 200-305C, Amendment A-4 to bylaw number 06-04, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting noise in the town of St. Andrews, third and final reading. As suggested by our municipal lawyer, amendment number A-4 to bylaw 06-04, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting noise in the town of St. Andrews. Some of the timeline of motions, motion 161 on the May 20 was first reading. Motion 198 in June 20 was second reading. And note that a public hearing of objections is not required, as this is not a significant change to the bylaw. So the motion that leave be granted to move to third and final reading for amendment number A4 to bylaw 06-04, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting noise in the town of St. Andrews.
Can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
Second, Councillor Gumshoe.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle. Any questions, Council? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
That was an aye, Councillor Akaji?
That wasn't me. That was Counselor Bishop.
Oh, Councillor Bishop? Sorry, we're having a little bit of a time lag here.
I said aye.
Okay, good. The motion passes. And now I will read for the third and final time. I think it's fairly long. We've read it before by title, I guess. Is amendment number A-4 to bylaw number 66-04, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting noise in the town of St. Andrews. Be it enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews that bylaw number 06-04, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting noise in the town of St. Andrews, is hereby amended as follows. 1, by deleting sections 7, 8, and 9 and replacing it with the following: 7, offenses and penalties. And that is read for the third and final time on the 6th day of July, 2020.
Okay, moving on to the next exciting bylaw. We have PS 200-306C, and it's amendment A-5 to bylaw 02-14, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting open air fires, third and final reading. As suggested by our municipal lawyer, amendment number A-5 to bylaw 02-14, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting open air fire. The motion timeline, motion 162 in May 20, first reading. Motion 199 in June 20 was second reading. Note that the public hearing of objections is not required, as this is not a significant change to the bylaw. So the motion is that leave be granted to move to third and final reading for amendment number A-5 to bylaw 02-14, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting open air fires.
I have a seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Questions? If none, I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is passed. And I will read the amendment for the third and final time. This is amendment number A-5 to bylaw number 02-14, a bylaw of the municipality of the town of St. Andrews respecting open air fires. Be it enacted by the council of the town of St. Andrews that bylaw number 02-14, a bylaw of the town of St. Andrews respecting open air fires within the town of St. Andrews is hereby amended as follows. 1, by deleting section 4 and replacing it with the following: section 4, offenses and penalties. Time on the 6th of July, 2020. Okay, Councillor Groot.
Thank you. Next item is PS 200601, and the subject is amendments to Schedule B and G to bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews. Background: to enact the pilot project, several amendments must occur to bylaw 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews. The following is a list of schedules that need to be amended to enact the pilot project. Schedule B, no parking anytime, Queen Street North Side from Harriet to Princess Royal Street. Schedule G, parking for persons with disabilities, one space on King Street beside Scotiabank. The motion number 1 is that council moves to amend Schedule B, no parking anytime, to bylaw number 18-01, a bylaw to regulate vehicular traffic in the town of St. Andrews from 26th of September, or June 26th to September 8th, 2020.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is that Councillor Akagi or Councillor Bishop? Councillor Akagi. Sorry, Councillor Akagi.
That's all right.
Any questions? Hearing none. Call the question. All in favor, please
Your
signify
worship,
by
through
saying
you.
aye. Oh, sorry, Mr. Spear.
I know there's been some discussion among council about the pilot project, and this is kind of related to it. So I don't know if you want to jump into this motion without the broader discussion. It's not on the agenda tonight, so you don't have to discuss it at all, but I don't want to make these amendments if they're going to be amended in another 10 or 15 minutes. So I just want to bring that up for council's consideration if they are going to do anything to move forward.
Council, you've heard from our Chief Administrative Officer. Do we anticipate that that these really deal with parking issues or that we put in place because of the pilot project in the main? Do we see any reason to not go forward with this? Or Councillor Grew, you have a comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the Chief Administrative Officer has a very good point. I think a broader discussion of the pilot project might be useful for council. I know that Councillor Gumashel had some very interesting ideas with regards to the pilot project that I think might be workable. But when I look at these amendments, one is related to Queen Street, and the other one is related to parking for persons with disabilities. So if I'm not mistaken, I think we can move ahead with those anyway. And then have that more wholesome discussion about the pilot project afterwards.
Anyone else want to weigh in on this? My view is the same, that we should go forward with this and have the wider discussion afterwards, because these may prevail in any event.
I agree.
I concur. We should move forward.
All right, we will move forward then.
But just,
where was I at? Did
Your
we have
Worship, if I could, just to the point of Mr. Spear, is we could just do an amendment after the conversation should one of the additional parking spots or I don't know, we just vote it through, we can't amend it after, and it wasn't an advertised motion, right? Unless we just can bring it from the floor. It's just more of a technicality, but if somebody has a good idea on another parking spot, if we don't put it through right now, we wait till after we have the conversation, we can easily add it in.
I think we're voting on the one that prevents parking on Queen Street. So can we not pass that one through and talk about the changes with the parking spaces for the other one, the handicap? Or is it both of them?
My only problem, some of the streets that we're doing one-sided parking don't really need one-sided parking. I know William has always had two-sided parking without issue, although whereas Edward is really, I don't know why the streets are different sizes, but Edward, even with any parking is an issue. Whereas some streets, it's always been two-sided and it's never really been that big an issue. So I don't know if we do want to take a more full review of this when we do a review. And the idea of the accessibility parking is a different issue. I guess we can pass that through, but.
Whichever.
Council, to sum up, are we suggesting that we should, defer that motion that we're currently dealing with, move on to the parking for persons with disabilities and deal with that one? Or should we defer all of this until we have our wider discussion? Looking for some advice here.
Safe thing would be just wait till we have the conversation.
I guess we're at the conversation point now.
Yeah, we're almost there. This probably should have been the last motion, not one in between.
Yeah.
As a de facto thing, we are actually banning it on one side, so it's not whether we do it right now or not.
Yeah,
it seems to be working in that way.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be bad maybe to take a look if some streets are a bit wider, because I know we widened William on one side to make it wider. And it's always been like with two-sided parking. I've never had that much an issue. Now, I don't know with the new regime, if we expect bigger trucks to be kind of turning down there, maybe that's the issue. I'm not sure.
Well, maybe we ought to, I think what we need to do here, Council, rather than spend any more time in interim discussion, we should just table these two motions until we have our further discussion of the entire project. Could I have a motion to table these, please, from someone?
I'll move, Your Worship.
Okay.
I'll
Deputy
second.
Mayor. Second, okay. All in favor of tabling the two motions associated with this, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We'll table those two motions. Thank you, Council.
Your Worship? Just I guess a point of order is we have already instituted what's in here. Does this pose a problem for us, Mr. Spear? Since we've already done this without the approval of the legislated approval of council.
In discussions with council in the last few weeks, you had given staff the authority to try to make changes on the fly. So we're wary of issuing tickets, but it gives us the ability to ask people to move and things. And so that's what this was doing, is stuff that we've implemented. We're trying to formalize, but some changes have been suggested since this agenda package was put out. So I'm just working together with council to try to see what way they'd like to go.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we can just table this until after dark on July the 6th, 2020, when we finish the rest of the meeting, and bring it back.
On that note, Your Worship, BTHC 200401, submitted by Deputy Mayor Henderson. The subject is Passamaquoddy Lodge request for support for a new facility. The background, as we heard earlier tonight, on June 17, 2020, the town of St. Andrews received a letter from Caroline Davies, President of the Board of Directors of the Passamaquoddy Lodge, regarding council support for a new Passamaquoddy Lodge. Provided to council is a copy of the letter submitted. The Board of Directors is asking the council if they would, number one, support the project of a new Passamaquoddy Lodge nursing home in St. Andrews. Two, if the town is willing to consider discussions on land for the new facility. The motion that council moves to support the Passamaquoddy Lodge Board of Directors regarding a new nursing home and open discussions with the Board of Directors on land options in St. Andrews. Council invites the Board of Directors to make a presentation on the project at the earliest convenience, which we saw tonight.
You already did. I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Akaji. Questions, Council? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question. Yes.
Just a quick one is that during the presentation there was I guess a lack of specifics on which land, where, the details, the meat that I was hoping would be there wasn't quite there. I understand why, but it makes it a bit more difficult for us to make a decision on specifics. I support the Passamaquoddy Lodge moving ahead, and certainly we can open discussions, but we need more details in the future as we move forward.
No, I concur with that, but I think the motion as it's written only suggests that we enter into those detailed discussions about the possibility of land that the municipality may have that could be suitable. So I agree with you. We need more specifics. But
and I got the sense that the municipal land was not the only game in town. There were other options.
I think you're correct. They're looking at other options as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Grew. I concur. But I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is passed.
May I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
Would they be looking for a letter of support from the town to say that we would sort of concur that a new nursing home is needed and that sort of thing, that we would see as a town, see it as a valuable resource to have in our town?
I believe that's exactly what they're looking for, something that they can take forward, suggesting that the municipal council of the town of St. Andrews is interested in having a new nursing home here, and for all of those reasons that you've cited and maybe some others.
So would you be prepared to write a letter in that regard, Mayor?
Well, yes, certainly. That's
Thank you.
what I would see as the logical outcome of this.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gummichelle, I think you're up next. Is that you?
Thank you, Your Worship. Under the Rec and Services Registry, reference number RCS 200601, dated June 17, 2020, submitted by myself, and the subject is Sortie, Katie's Cove property. And the background reads, on June 15, 2020, the town of St. Andrews received a letter from the St. Andrews Outdoor Recreation and Trails Incorporated President, David Johnson, regarding their ownership of a section of Katie's Cove. A copy of the letter has been provided to council with this report. Sortie and the Board of Directors are presenting to the council the option of transferring the ownership of the property they own to the town. The purpose stated in the letter for the transfer is that Sortie sees the best course of action to preserve the causeway would be to provide it to the town to be maintained as a municipal asset. The motion reads that council moves to accept the transfer of ownership of Katie's Cove property owned by the St. Andrews Outdoor Rec and Trails Incorporated to the town of St. Andrews.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second that.
Councillor Grew, thank you. Discussion, Councillor.
I'd make that motion, Your Worship.
Sorry?
That I made the motion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looking for a seconder. Yeah, sorry.
If I'd like to ask a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
No, certainly.
If we took ownership of this section in the future, and even now, are we also responsible for any damage that would be incurred when we travel over the area to repair the causeway, that area that's damaged? This could be an ongoing scenario because of future storms and climate change issues. So I'm just wondering about that.
We would own the trail right from O'Neill Farm Road right to the causeway. So I guess, yes, we would be responsible for any rehabilitation that's required after construction. But at least initially, Sortie said that they'd be willing to participate with us in that, at least early going.
Perhaps, Mr. Spear, I know council did receive a detailed report from our engineers about what the current cost is estimated to be for curing the damage that was done by the storm surge in April. Can you just quickly tell us about that for the public's benefit?
Well, thank you, Your Worship. So as you know, the CBCL came in and actually volunteered their time on behalf of SORTI to review the damage and come up with different scenarios. And I don't have the report off of me, so if somebody has it in front of them, you may have to correct me, but there are three options where number one was to maintain the trail as is, but lift up the concrete, and I think that was around 60,000. Number two was to repair the trail and replace all the concrete, the asphalt. That was 80,000. And the third option was to lift it by a third of a meter, so about a foot. That is supposed to prevent any, well, help reduce the chances, we'll say, of future storm surges that'll do that type of damage again. And I think that was about 85,000, but that didn't include asphalt again. It was just that the asphalt kind of ended at the clearing to go into Katie's Cove, or as you see from the causeway. I guess their thought is, and the staff would support this, is that the asphalt is expensive, and you know, it's already shown that we're going to have these storms at least once a decade, if not more. And while it was a great addition to have the asphalt, it'd be costly to replace that. Well, either way, if we just tear up the asphalt and replace the gravel, or raise it a meter and replace the gravel and leave it gravel, that's a lot easier to manage than having to continuously re-asphalt the damaged areas.
But right at the moment, there is between what, $60,000 and $80,000 there damage that needs to be corrected in the short term.
In the short term, then there'd be another potentially, if we destroy the trail. So the thoughts are at the top of O'Neill Farm Road, or we'd go take the equipment through there probably in the fall, so to leave it open for the summertime and do the repairs, and hoping we don't have to, that we don't destroy the existing pavement much, but realizing it may happen because it was built as a walking trail or a small driveway, not meant to handle construction equipment that's going to be needed for such a big project. And that could add another $50,000 to the project in 2021 to resurface that area.
Could we just resurface the bit that goes then towards the Kingsbury property, as opposed to the whole?
It's whatever council wishes. We could tear it all up and keep it as gravel. That's really what council wishes in the future.
But like, would that change that price quite a bit if we just resurface, so you could go to the other side of Katie's Cove and add gravel on the causeway side, I guess you would say?
Reduce it some, but there could be damage from where you get off the road up until the split, whether you go towards the beach side or out towards the causeway. That part could be damaged as well. So that could be, you know, $30,000 worth of damages, if that's only as far as you go, is before you turn onto the right onto the causeway. If that's just asphalt and leave everything else to the right, heading out to the causeway as gravel, then that would reduce the cost for sure.
Mm-hmm. Your Worship, is there any indication on the risk associated with its current state, like letting go, like if we don't get this project going right away? Well,
it is, you know, getting more dilapidated every day, and we're gotta hope we don't have a big northeast this summer. But the structure and the armor stone that's there is fairly good, the base, but what's happening is a lot of the up top gravel and the existing asphalt is still chipping away and falling down some. So I would recommend a discussion, if this gets approved by council tonight, one way or the other. We should have a discussion very soon about which direction you'd like to go and how to restore that. So we have a plan, and that by whatever council wants, staff up maybe the fall, so we can have the summer use out of the trail, because we'll have to be closed for that whole section. But we could start that work probably in August if council deems it that top of priority, and the community will understand, because certainly they're looking to have that section repaired.
So in other words, the motion that's before us right now is simply to accept ownership of that piece of property from Sortie, and then it will be up to council to decide what to do after we acquire the property. Is that essentially, it's a two-part discussion?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay.
Your Worship, if I could add a few more details for council's benefit, is currently the causeway is half owned by the town, half owned by Sortie. So it's sort of, you can't do much with it if you only own half of it. The other issue is that you can call the causeway whatever you want, but ultimately it is a dam. And this dam has suffered some structural damage. The organization of Sortie does not have the financial resources to repair that damage. We are at risk, especially with the incoming storm season in the fall, of sustaining even more damage and potentially at some point losing the causeway or losing that dam. That is a risk. So I think the transferring the ownership to the town opens up, Sortie, I think, was looking at it from a point of view that it opens up new funding sources. The town has certainly a lot deeper pockets than Sortie does. Sortie doesn't have the fundraising or the capability to finance it on their own right now. And the other issue, and this is another one, is that right now Sortie is totally responsible for maintaining the water levels in Katie's Cove. And to me, that seems to be a municipal asset, Katie's Cove, and it should be the town that dictates what the water levels should be, not a not-for-profit organization. So there's a lot of moving pieces here that perhaps council may want to consider.
So if I could, Your Worship, through Mr. Spear, it sounds like the recommendation would, if we take this property on, would be to restore it this year. I was wondering what would be our funding source for that? Would it be new debt?
Actually, Deputy Mayor, within council's budget that was approved, we had $100,000 towards trails and sidewalks.
Yep.
That wasn't really earmarked for any specific project. There was a couple on the radar, but we haven't started anything in anticipation of this may be acquired by council, so that could be used out of that.
So it sounds like to me, so that 100 grand is great. I didn't know if we took a little bit out for that agreement we had on the upkeep of the trails, but nonetheless, that was a small amount out of the 100,000 if it was. But I think if you look at, we made a commitment to the trails this year, and I could, without even going back to them, I could tell you that this would be the #1 thing we could probably do for Sortie. Now, with that being said, we can't just look at it just for this one payment. It very well could happen again next year. And even if we put the extra 0.3 meters, this could be a costly endeavor for the town. But with that being said, I do think for protecting the cove, the historic significance of it, as well as we've always said that we need to do a little bit more to help trails. It's been mainly led by Sortie. I think that it makes a lot of sense for us to take this over. I am curious about the control of the water, and as far as the levels, is that something that our municipality with our current staff could take on, or is that would be a new responsibility for town staff? So before we make a decision like that, we should know what the impacts would be.
The truth is, Deputy Mayor, we've been doing this for many, many years.
Okay.
I guess the only caveat I will say is those particular gates are in questionable state of repair as well. I think Sortie has, and Councillor Groom might be able to talk on this, but one gate was damaged, and I think it's repaired and ready for installation once the causeway or dam is refurbished. But that could be additional liability that council's taking on over the next decade, is what happens to those gates. And the gates have serviced the town and the Algonquin well, because they've been there since, I think since the late 80s, early 90s, from what I understand. But it's every year we're kind of fighting with them a little bit more, and the design is starting to show some failure.
As you all know, the gates control the water level in Katie's Cove. Right now, Katie's Cove has become a tidal pool. The gates, Katie's Cove Incorporated has paid $16,000 to manufacture a new gate. We have the new gate right now. It's sitting at, I think, at Mr. LeBlanc's place, and it's ready for installation. The only challenge we've had is that the condition of the causeway is such that we couldn't get out there to actually install the gate. It's not a complicated installation. It's just a matter of getting the vehicle out there to do the actual work. So we're waiting for the causeway to be repaired to install the gate. And so everything is there in place, ready to go. It's all the expensive parts have been done.
And just for added for council consideration, if we control the entire causeway, it does give us some leverage with how the cove continues to operate in the future. We're a legitimate stakeholder in conversations moving forward.
Yeah. The other piece to the puzzle, of course, is Katie's Cove itself. And I still have to meet with the board of Katie's Cove, but in speaking with the board members, the long-term game plan now is to develop the cove and eventually turn it over to the town as a resource, to have a municipal beach that is owned by the town. And we would have, we're looking at the finer details as to whether or not there's still a need for Katie's Cove Incorporated to be involved, or whether the town wants to operate and maintain the beach on their own. So those details still have to be worked out, but ultimately where we're headed is to have a municipal resource at Katie's Cove. So it makes sense for the town to own those gates and to own have that ownership stake in Katie's Cove.
Yeah, no, look, I think that one step at a time here. I think our motion tonight is for us to take over that piece of property. And let's vote on that, and let's just hope. The other problem that we're going to have here is the decision about how we repair it will have to be something we talk about a little bit more, because clearly the other thing we don't know is we don't know the next time we're going to have a storm surge that takes it out again, and that's just part of being in that position as a dam, if you like, protecting Katie's Cove. So anyway, I think it's time to call the question. All in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, I guess we are now the new owners of a little piece of property. Thank you, Council.
Okay, Your Worship, the next item on the agenda is reference number RCS 200602, dated June 17, 2020, submitted by myself, Councillor Gumashall, and the subject is in-town segment of the Coastal Link Trail. The background reads, Coastal Link Trail is an initiative to connect a trail system in Maine, USA, to the Trans-Canada Trail System that starts in St. John, New Brunswick. A regional group is working towards the completion of this, and they are asking council to support an official segment within the municipal limits. Attached to the staff report is the proposed limit for the trail within the town. The motion reads that council move to support the proposed Coastal Link Trail System segment within the town of St. Andrews as displayed on the attached map. And I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gumashall. Seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Questions, Council?
Yeah, Your Worship, is Cornelia still a private road? Or have we legally taken ownership of that road? I know we had some back and forth, but I thought it was kind of left lingering still.
Mr. Spear?
Technically, I think or legally, I guess, I think it's still a private road, but having said that, the town's been maintaining it for 20 years, so I don't think they'll worry too much about that. There is one thing I want to bring to council's attention, though, is on the recommendation of SORTI, and you may or may not want to have couple of members of the public tune in, but nonetheless, is like the trail, as we said, like cuts through Katie's Cove and then crosses along the shore, then down Bar Road. And then what their preference would be is the old railway bed, as you know, at the bottom of Bar Road that heads out towards Shamcook, is actually what they're proposing to be the extended route. So instead of going back up Bar Road to the corner of Mowat and 120, or Mowat and Bar, and head out of town, they want to cross over on the old trestle, which, after having hiked it with Councillor Gumashell, it's certainly a beautiful area and scenic seaside and everything. But the only struggle we have is that there's some land ownership issues that are pretty monumental that have to be overcome there. So that's a huge question mark from the staff's perspective in the sky. And it might be my recommendation that the official trail actually go up the Bar Road, meet with the 127 and head out. And certainly if that segment of the trail can become a reality, it can be signed to allow people on their way out of town across like a coastal view instead of going along the road. But I'm not so sure at this stage in time if where council wants to commit to that as the official route. Councillor Gumashell may want to speak to that.
Thank you, CAO, through you, Your Worship. The CAO misspoke. The trestle wouldn't be part of the spine. So the trestle is what we just talked about down in Katie's Cove, and we're not going that way. So just to clarify, we're going around and down through the cemetery, and then he's speaking about whether to go out of town on the old rail bed at the Bar Road or to join up to the 127. I think some of these minor details can be worked out later. Same with some of the details with the Algonquin, but we've been sitting on this trying to decide where the trail route is going to go through town since well before this council began. I've made similar presentations to the former council on a number of occasions, showing Cornelia and an around town loop. I mean, it's nothing new. And funding has been doled out to our neighboring communities, St. George and St. Stephen, and we've missed out on those funding opportunities. And it's time for us to step up and say, okay, this is the route, and this is what we're going to do, and we can work out the details later. Continuing to press for public consultations and when it's been going on for years seems to be a waste of time and missed opportunities. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but that's my comment.
Okay.
Worship?
Yes, Councillor Griffin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I disagree with Councillor Gumashell. I think there should be extensive public consultations. I recall a few years ago when we wanted to do a trail from Cemetery Road to Bar Road, there was public consultations. We had meetings with people, and that resulted in some significant input. I think this has been largely done behind closed doors. Most people don't know what the route is. This route goes right in front of people's houses. They don't know what streets are being done. And the Algonquin Resort has raised some very, I guess, compelling concerns. And it just shows that further discussion is needed. It doesn't have to be a long delay, but I think we have to have those public consultations so that people know that we value their input and that they have a say in where this route goes. The other thing is that I would request that this matter be discussed in closed session because there are some issues surrounding this of a sensitive nature and politically legal in nature that need to be addressed. So I would suggest we move this topic to the closed session at the end of this meeting so that we can have that more in-depth discussion on these issues.
Could I ask something? I may be missing something, but aren't these primarily public roads? I mean, we have the bit that the Kiwanis and Sortie built, which is built, and then everything else seems to be public roads as far as I can tell here. And so I'm not really sure what the issue would be.
The Trans-Canada Trail goes through Grand Bay, and if you look in your package, it's called a Sharrow. It's I don't know if you can see that, but it's basically a picture of a bicycle on a road. And I'm sure that the Grand Bay Council didn't consult with everybody along the road to say that the road is going to be a place where bicycles might go. I mean, I don't see. Perhaps Councillor Grew has some insights that I don't have, but I don't understand why we would delay this any further. We've had presentations from the Coastal Link Trail. They have funding available.
You've had private presentations. You haven't had one public presentation on this issue, Councillor Gomes.
Something, but to Councillor Harrison's point, they're public roads. All you're going to do is paint a bicycle and an arrow on it. It's not rocket science.
I mean, I really think we have a habit of making things controversial that are not controversial at all. Like I can't say Ernest Street right outside my window can no longer have bicycles. You know, I can't say Power Street on the other, you know, they're public roads. If we want to make them like where we try to get bikes to go down, it's no different. Really, we try to get the RVs to take a certain route through town to get to the point. Now we're saying, well, the bike should take a certain route through town to enjoy the town. This really isn't something we need to have 50 meetings and near a steering committee and like. I really think we over committee things. We never make decisions. I think we should move ahead with some of these things and make the town better.
Your worship, I see it both ways. They are public roads. Most of them are already existing trails that over, I guess you could say half of it really is. But there's a little bit of a difference between just someone biking by your house or having a marketing tool that is nationally advertised or internationally advertised to go by your house as a trail. And again, it's a little bit of input, but I see it both ways for sure. I'm actually, my problem right now is I'm torn on this one, to be honest with you.
I mean, I was never given input for all the, you know, RVs to go by Parr Street to then turn and go down there, or the college kids to all drive to college, you know. I don't know, guys. I think some things it's not that hard a decision, but we make it a hard decision. And this one seems like a simple one.
Your worship, has there been any more dialogue since the email that was shared with the stakeholder out on near Brandy Road that we need to connect between Marine Science Drive?
Mr. Spear, I don't think there's been any follow-up on that. I'll ask Mr. Spear to comment.
No, that due to the state of the economy and the particular industry they're in, as you saw, the email was a quick and thorough, though, discussion from somebody about what their vision of it is. But, you know, they aren't in a position to really have discussions right now as they work through the summer tourism season and try to figure out what to do. I guess one thing, just as Councillor Gumichel has said, there is funding on the table, that there's going to be a program, federal program opening up, from my understanding, relatively soon, like this month or early next month, that they're looking for shovels to the ground types of projects. And what we're suggesting is that if council approves this, the Coastal Trails Inc. has already offered to do a pre-design study about what it's going to cost to do certain things. And it's basically to restore certain parts of the trail. Well, you know, from the Brandy Cove along Joe's Point to repave that essentially is what they were recommending, to bring that up to par, because council has paved a significant portion of that with infrastructure that has been done over the last 2 or 3 years, and almost right to Brandy Cove Road. And then there's a discussion with the, you know, the stop up at Brandy Cove Road, how to go beyond that. But it'd be good to try to get that in sooner rather than later in order to access the funding, because we're not talking just a pre-design study. There might be 90 cents on the dollar. We're not talking 50-50, 90 cents on the dollar. We have to come up with 10% potentially to pay for upgrades to part of the system.
Your worship, I'm not talking about, you know, months and months of delays. I'm talking about having a public meeting to show people what this route is, to get their feedback and their input. The Coastal Link and the Van Horn Trail people have been meeting for months and months and months, if not a year or more, and haven't had one public meeting on this issue. And I think that to turn around now and say you're delaying the whole project by involving the public, I think is a bit rich. I think the public deserves to know what the route's going to be. I think the public deserves to be heard. And I think the public, we're here to represent them. And to put something, to approve something without even consulting, without even showing them where the route is going to go, I think it's a bit much.
Thank you, Councillor Groove.
Thank you.
Should we do a consultation on the Katie's Cove thing then as well?
I would expect
where do we end consulting?
Katie's Cove has already had two public consultation meetings.
No, but I mean the
with
town
public.
buying that piece of trail. We didn't consult on that. I don't know. It just seems like overdoing it.
Well, this is a major decision. You live on Joe's Point Road and now you've got an international trail being advertised in front of your door. You might have wanted to say, who came up with this? And why wasn't I even advised about it?
It's a public road.
With new signs and new sharrows and a bunch more traffic going on your road. It'd be nice to be told, that's all, and just be consulted. It may not change anything, but at least have that consultation. Just ask them. It'd be the nice thing to do.
Mr. Spear, before we decide what direction to go on this, just I wanted a clarification maybe you could make for us. I think that something was referred to as private property, but in fact, Brandy Cove Road is a stopped up public road. Is that still correct? It's still a town road, correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay. So we do need the collaboration or cooperation of the landowners' land that it goes through, not over, but through. And but we could move forward with that. And the next question I have that I think is important in this is that the money that may be available to us that we may or may not be losing out on. Is there a time frame here that we need to be concerned about, or can we take a little more time on this?
If you don't mind, Your Worship, I can see Tanny Herrick can at least name it. So can I bring her into it because she knows the funding a lot better than me?
Certainly, I would appreciate that actually.
So Tanny, can you unmute and maybe comment on the funding arrangements?
Sure. So thank you, Your Worship and councillors. There isn't necessarily time limit per se, but certainly there is, as Mr. Spear mentioned, there is potentially some federal opportunity for funding that if there are the pre-design studies ready and that a project is shown to be shovel ready, that there's opportunity for projects to move forward a little quicker. So that would pretty much be the only thing. The other, I guess, there is funding. The board, the Coastal Link Trail Inc. board hasn't voted yet until the route is established for St. Andrews. But as of right now, there is some funding that's left from the $1 million that's been allotted to the Coastal Link Trail Inc. back in 2018. So there is money that's been kind of earmarked for a pre-design study for St. Andrews. And perhaps if it's delayed significantly, that funding could go to potentially other projects, but that would be the only thing.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Harrington. Okay, council.
Thanks, Tanya.
Where do we go next, council? Want to call the question, or do you want to go into closed session?
I'm not really sure what the closed session issue is.
Oh,
I wish I could talk about it in open session, but I can't.
Sorry, Councilor Grew, I didn't hear.
Your Worship, I think Councilor Grew has identified an issue that should be discussed in closed, and therefore it should be discussed in closed.
Okay. right?
I'm not sure what it is, but I concur with that.
I'll look for a motion to go into closed session.
Are we finished with our business?
Should we put it at the end of the day, though?
Yeah,
we
at the
don't
end
have
of
to
the day,
kick
we're-
everyone else off?
Agreed. Sorry, my bad. Let's just move
So Councilor
the
Harrison's
next motion. We'll go back.
I'll start with a bit of an apology. I actually don't have this section of the main package, but I think I can wing it because we've done this a few times before. I believe these are for the municipal plan hearing of objections and obtaining views of PRAC. And so I won't be able to give the full background tonight, but I think needless to say, we've gone over it quite a few times. We've been to the public, we've been back. We've been to the public again, we've been back. We've had the PRAC give us various views on each of these go-arounds. And so without further ado, if you're okay with it, I'm just gonna launch right into the two motions. So the first one is PED 200101E. And it's setting the date of the public hearing of objections for the municipal plan MP 20-01. And I move that council set 6 p.m. on Monday, July 27, 2020 for a public hearing of objections for the municipal plan MP 20-01 in accordance with section 111 of the Community Planning Act.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Akaji. Questions, council? Hearing none. I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Here we go again.
Any opposed?
And my second one is PED 200101F, obtaining views of the PRAC. And I move that council requests written view of the Planning Review and Adjustment Committee on the proposed municipal plan bylaw MP 20-01 in accordance with section 110 of the Community Planning Act.
Can I have a seconder for that motion, please?
I'll second it.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Any questions? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion is also carried. Thank you, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you.
Your worship,
Yes,
I have to note that we are at 9:28. We are at 2.5 hours into the meeting. To proceed, I need a motion from council to proceed beyond the 2.5 hour limit.
I got here late. Does that kind of give us a bit of leeway?
No.
I'll also move that we continue on
I second that motion.
Longer. I'll second it.
in favor of the motion to extend the meeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. We will extend the meeting. Thank you, Mr. Knopper.
The next item is
Should be
PS.
noted, that's the most unenthusiastic I have heard in a long time.
Next motion, PS 200601, bylaw officer assistance. Background, with the Water Street pilot project underway, it is staff's recommendation that we need help to assist drivers in finding suitable parking spots, talk to pedestrians, and when needed, enforce our vehicular bylaw. The Canadian Corps of Commissioners offers this service in other jurisdictions and are willing to enter a short-term agreement to provide personnel to assist in this endeavor over the summer. If it's determined their services are no longer required, it can be canceled with 2 weeks' notice. This agreement is attached for council's perusal. Motion that the Canadian Corps of Commissioners, New Brunswick and PEI Division Incorporated, be appointed as assistant bylaw enforcement officers for the town of St. Andrews until September 6th, 2020.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Questions?
is it possible to do this but have them purely educational? I mean, I never even like the idea of having one bylaw enforcement officer, because my theory is it's only ever going to be locals that actually get tickets. So can we not have two more people going around giving tickets, but they could call our one actual officer if needed, but maybe they're just the guys saying, please move on, see the sign, don't park there, and not really out there putting tickets on cars or whatever. We also take a
Council,
board.
anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Your worship?
Yes.
I'm not sure about that because I was downtown last week, and I noticed that the hardware store, for example, had one of their employees was sitting right outside the parking lot trying to police the parking lot, and they were pointing out that there were cars that had been parked there for 6 hours. And the people were parking there, ignoring the 30-minute signs, and just going on whale watching trips, going to the restaurant, going wherever. And you could see the frustration on their face, saying, we tried to get parking for our staff, for our customers, and people are ignoring it. And I think that we need to start, I would even go further and say we need to start towing once in a while. If people are going to ignore it, blatantly ignore it, excuse me, your vehicle's gone. The ticket, they'll just throw it away. And there's no way we can enforce that. But I think, at least have a ticket or something. Right now, just saying, please don't park there, and they would do it anyway.
But we have a bylaw enforcement officer they can call. I just don't want 3 people running around slapping tickets and all, like, here and there and everywhere.
I think we're talking one.
Your worship, through you.
Yes.
The internal agreement is exactly what Councillor Harrison said, is that right now, I think they issued like maybe 10 warning tickets just to say that, don't do whatever you're doing. You parked in a handicap zone when you didn't have the decal. You were in a 30-minute zone in there for 2 hours. But I've instructed the commissioners that if they're going to give out tickets, they have to approve it through the bylaw enforcement officer first, because in the end, it'll be him that has to deal with it. So we have that internal control already. But I think it's important to understand that they should have some sort of power, because if people think they don't have any, then they'll just disregard them fully. So I think we've got to give them the.
I agree with Councillor Grew. We should start telling a few people, and that'll get the word out faster.
I concur. That'll do the trick.
It's a good problem to have, having lots of people downtown. I've met the new commissioner, and he's working really hard. And the harder he works, the less work that he has to do. And I think we have to have enforcement. And I think Councillor Harrison needs to get a bicycle.
Not self-interested at all, my argument here.
Dog!
All right, folks, before we get too giddy, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, that motion is passed. Okay, I think that's the end of the motions for now.
So now we're ready to go into closed session.
I think we go through the
Question.
we need to
Oh,
look
the
at
question period. Okay.
question period. Mr. Knopper, do we have any questions?
You're on mute,
You're
Mr.
muted.
Knopper.
You're muted, Mr. Knopper.
Apologies, Council. Through you, Your Worship, I'm just going to go to the people on Zoom first, and then I'll go to the comments on Facebook. So, Dale Chambers, do you have any questions for Council? Give her a second.
No, I don't. Thank you, Mr. Knopper.
Thank you, Dale. Laura Cooper. You have the floor to council. If you'd like to ask a question, you may ask. Seeing none, I'm going to the questions or comments on social media. There were really only two that were relevant within this, or sorry, three. The first one was, I would like to see some data surrounding the past accidents around pedestrians and traffic on the wharf. Question two was, or comment is, it is also very restrictive to personal boaters that currently need appointments to bring supplies or equipment to their boats. So this is regarding the wharf and the lift gate. The final one was in regards to parking. Two-sided parking has never been an issue on other streets because there has never been the demand created by limited parking on Water Street. Those were the main questions and comments regarding this meeting. Through your worship, you can move to closed if you, or councillor comments or questions.
Councillor questions?
I'm sorry,
comments?
worship. Sorry,
yes.
worship. I'm sorry to interject again, but there's actually an earlier motion that was
Mr. Spear?
tabled. We talked about going back to talking about the pilot project again earlier in the meeting, if you want to give staff new directions or whatever, but that wasn't a closed session item, so I don't know how you want to proceed with that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Mr. Spear, for reminding me of that. Let's go back to that now before we go into closed session. Mr. Spear, could you bring that forward?
Sure. So I think earlier today, I think Mr. Knopper emailed you a lot of the comments that have come in off of Facebook and things. And honestly, the two main complaints about the project from locals that aren't businesses is that the parking is not just inconvenient, but it creates problems for people that may have mobility issues. That some of them don't have the decals for the accessible parking, but even if they do, some of our locations are so far away, which may not seem like a lot to us that are easy to walk it. But if you're on a walker or you have issues and with lung issues or heart issues, that extra half a block or something can be significant. And so I'd say that's the number one complaint about people, and I'm not sure what a good solution to that is. The number two concern is that is the look of the barricades. Because of the short notice, there really wasn't a lot we could do about that. I have noticed some people have put up like little Canada flags and things, and that helps some, and the town could invest in some of that along those 3 blocks. I was able to visit all the open businesses today just for council's approval Friday and today. So I was able to talk to 18 shops, and there's about a third of the shops said their revenue is actually up compared to last year. I mean, they aren't going to say the pilot project is the same because there's so many differing factors, but it's just for so you know. There's about a third that said the revenues held steady, which again, because of COVID-19, they're still relatively happy. There's about a third that the revenue's down, but there's only 2 that have said they felt it was because of the pilot project. Everybody else said, with COVID-19 and the borders being closed. And again, we're only a week into it, a week and 3 days. So I don't know if we really had a good data period. Some people were really enthusiastic about it and appreciated the fact that council made the decision to try this in recognition of the problems that we anticipated because of COVID-19. There was discussions about the delivery, but most delivery companies find it just as convenient as ever. We've opened up a couple of spots along mid-block to allow deliveries to be made instead of having to go to the corners. So they appreciate that. And there's been some questions about having senior parking. But again, I'm not exactly sure where that would be to be real convenient, but up on King Street and stuff. But to get people really on the front street, you almost have to either abandon half the project and just go one side, or abandon the project altogether. Overall, staff thinks, generally the business community, I think, really supports this, and they're liking the way it's going, and they're willing to give it a little bit longer. And council had hoped a couple of weeks ago when they initiated this, they'd give it at least a month. And so we're at a table of all the parking spots and just to see if people are actually going there. To be fair, the weather hasn't been really good since we started this. It's been a lot of cloudy days and stuff, so it'd be great to have a weekend of full sun, which we should have this week, and that'll give us a really good energy. And I've heard, 2 or 3 people say that tourists really appreciate it. So there's been good comments coming from people outside of St. Andrews saying they appreciate the effort we've made. They like the extra space. They like the fact we've put those little sanitization pumps on every block so people could access that. But again, there are a significant portion of our own population that is strongly opposed to this. So those are the 2 elements we're going at. And I guess at this point in time, the staff's recommendation, Paul and I had a long talk this afternoon, is we'd still like to see this continued for another few weeks and then make a decision late July, early August to see. A lot of the reaction came in the first couple of days of it coming up, so no one was given really a fair chance to see how this came, and we've noticed less complaints today than we've seen, and I'd encourage council to continue with it, but I'm sure many of you have had the same complaints that we've gotten, and so I wait further input from yourselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Spear. Council comments?
Mayor?
Yes.
Councillor Akergy?
Yes.
I have one from the laundromat because I was downtown and one of the owners approached me and said that they would have liked to have had the 2. And I observed that there are a lot of people who are summertime residents who don't have washer and dryer at their house. They use the laundromat with 1 spot. Some people were parking there for longer than the 30 minutes. And I think 2 spots would be good because if there are students they need to have the laundry facilities, or there are summer residents that need to have the laundry facilities. I did suggest that she write a letter again to council asking for 1 more space. I think it's reasonable to allow her the 2 spaces in front of the laundromat, to allow them, some people to drop their clothes off, go, and then come back and get them later. I think I would suggest that we allow them 1 more parking spot. The only complaints that I got were the fences were ugly, but as the CAO mentioned, I mean, they've put flags on them. No fencing is going to be nice, and we see that with the deer fencing. So, and I had tourists that stopped me and said that they take this picture downtown in the picturesque area and they didn't like the fences behind their picture. But I did suggest you could go to the Algonquin Hotel or to Centennial Park or the Blockhouse or Indian Point. You could go to any of those places, or the wharf, and have your picture taken there with the background of the town. So I think it's an adjustment, and I agree with the CAO that we should give it a chance. It's a new change, and we're doing so many changes. The only thing I would suggest is that we remember to self-distance, because downtown, when I was downtown, people were not self-distancing. Although they had the space, there were lots of people that were quite close together, and I would just like to see that maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akergy. Anyone else wish to comment?
I'd like to just say something, Mayor.
Yes.
I noticed on July 1st, I was downtown midday. I was the only person down there with a mask on at that time, and everybody else was walking around like they were in another world. We got to continue using our masks when we're not social distancing, when we're close together, because otherwise we're going to have a problem like they had in northern New Brunswick. So I think that everyone should still realize that we're not home free yet, and we need to continue using our masks and when we're close connections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop.
Your worship.
Councillor Harrison. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Harrison.
I was just going to ask on the aesthetics issue, is there a way just to buy canvas covers or something that you, because I'm assuming using these metal things as the kind of base of a barrier, there must be whatever, like the place where we buy these also sell a nice cover you put over and tie on. Now, we wouldn't want to do it this year because we don't know if it's going to go into the future that long. But I assume there are kind of more, if we want to make the investment, we can still use our metal barriers, but make them look like I think we need more than just a flag over it. You know, like I think we got to make them look good. But I do think it looks better than having a whole street of SUVs and pickup trucks, which is what we had all the time before.
Yeah.
So, but I think there must be a way to make these look better if in fact in 2021 this becomes a more permanent solution.
Thank you, Ms. Councillor Harrison.
We did have a positive letter that suggested buoys and ropes.
Yeah, Your Worship, just on that one, I think there was a bit of concern about like cars side swiping with rope. It's not as sturdy. So you could very quickly find yourself in amongst pedestrians when the metal will slow you down at least a little quicker. You'll know you hit it versus rope. You may not even notice you're hitting it. So just, I was wondering if we could just form an action plan and maybe send a formal survey to all the businesses that are in the, we'll call it the pilot project district, as well as businesses that are within a block or two of them, because they're being impacted by this equally because of the parking. I think it would be very good if we just sent a simple 4 questions, which they can email town hall. Obviously one letter per business, but the real question is this pilot project helping or hurting your business? It's that simple. And if it's helping, that is the goal. The other question should be, would you like it to continue? Yes or no? So that way we can find out from the businesses if this is happening. I do think that all of these problems are legitimate. I do personally feel that the parking concern is a legitimate concern. Although I do not like the look of the barriers, the reality is if they were helping businesses keep their doors open this winter and next year, I'm okay with an ugly fence for a few weeks, guys. In September, it's going to look the way it always did. There's nothing permanent that was done down there. But I do think that we need an educated number. I appreciate the CAO going to 18 businesses, but I think we should give them all the opportunity to give us input. And then we have a formal meeting with both the BIA and the chamber with those results. And we come together, because all 3 of us made this solution together, and all 3 of us determined if we want this to continue or not. I don't think it would take long to get that survey out with just those couple questions, maybe even a box for suggestions. And I think we could come and make a quick decision as early as next week. Give them a week to respond, not even 3 business days. And then council will have a better idea, because these people they hear the complaints just like we do. The people that go to their stores, that don't know if so-and-so can't go into their store because they can't get there. I think we really need to trust that the businesses know what is best for the businesses, and they can guide us through this one. But the early indication was I got a bunch of emails the morning that we put the fences up, that it's ugly, this is a mistake. And most of those same businesses actually came back and said, my business went up. And it went up. And now I know the Maritime Bubble's open, so it's going to look a lot different. It's hard to compare apples and oranges. But the reality is everything I heard was business went up. That first Friday, the whole town was dead, all the attractions on the perimeter. But that weekend and since then, it's been busier overall. And that was the ultimate goal of this project. Long-term pain for long-term gain. If we didn't do something, you're going to see a lot of business in September, October, close their doors like they normally do, but they're not going to pay rent all winter. They're going to shut them down and they're not going to be back. And you could be facing next year a front street with half the businesses there. So we really need for the business community to tell us what to do.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Worship?
Anybody else want to comment? That's
Yes, sir. Your Worship,
Councilor Group.
yeah, I've been downtown a number of times, either on my bike or walking around. And one thing that I've noticed every time I've been there without fail is that most people are not using the road as a sidewalk. They're congregating and they're bunching up on the sidewalk itself, creating and a big part of this whole issue, this whole exercise, was to create social distancing so people would spread out, and that's not happening. In fact, it's becoming more congested. because the businesses have moved out on the sidewalk. The people are trying to squirt by them. And I won't even start about honeybeans and how that's become a COVID hotspot. But one suggestion that might help, the cattle fencing, and a number of people have used that term. I know Councillor Gumashell came up with what I thought was a fairly good idea, is let's just simply close off the streets from William to King and from King to the Save Easy, just like we do on Canada Day. And then the pedestrians can walk right down the street. The businesses can open up right to the edge of the sidewalk, giving them even more space, and people can spread out a lot more. And I think that might be more effective. It's going to be less confusing, less work for our town staff, and you can do it just for the weekends. You can do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I'm not going to claim ownership of that. This is Councillor Gumashell's idea, and you can pat yourself on the back, Councillor Gumashell, but I think that was a very, very positive idea. And
Thank you, Councillor Grew.
Requirements of social distancing, and it would help the businesses a heck of a lot more. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grew. It wasn't all my idea. I can't take credit for these things. Some of it comes from the transportation plan. Some of it comes from talking to my neighbors downtown here about number one. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the barricades are aesthetically abominable. They're very ugly. They're terrible looking. It's hard to look at. I could go on. The plan that I circulated to council and I shared with some of the members of the BIA was simply to shorten the distance of the street closure. Shorten the distance of the pilot and close the street off just on the weekend. So every weekend's a long weekend in St. Andrews, Thursday to Sunday. We decide on the time. Maybe that we close the street maybe 9 till 5 or whatever the case might be. We'd have to determine those things. But I circulated that all to council and spoke with some of you. I think that the deputy mayor has some valid points in that, we're all in this together and working together is the best way to sort it out. And maybe it does need a little more time to determine if what's working, if it's working right now, but we can't get around the fact that the barricades are really ugly and they really should, anything we could do to take them down and make the street look better is important.
Your worship?
Yes.
I would love nothing better for that to happen because that would make the distancing, it would allow maybe even the businesses allowed to even extend maybe even further because you've got a lot more room then. However, the reality is when we were doing it, we learned that there was 13 private driveways. If you look at a place like the Kennedy House, when someone wants to check in, where do they park? I don't know delivery schedules on Friday. And the other thing is staff would have to put no parking signs out every Thursday before getting everybody to move and then put it up. I'm going to be honest, it would be a lot more work for staff to do that plan, although I like it better. The reality is a plan like that, to be honest with you, we never chose it. That was one of the options that was originally presented, and we never chose it. We communicated. We've had an active communication strategy on this plan, and to switch it overnight, it's just going to add more confusion. But there is so much that would need to be figured out with that plan before we implemented it.
Well,
Could I say to
Deputy Mayor that in the original presentation, the barricade was a nice blue line that went down the street. It wasn't what we ended up with. Nothing against Mr. Knopper's rendering of the barricade, but it was a nice, pretty blue line that went down along it and blocked off the parking, not the triathlon fencing. I've been in races and I've seen that kind of fencing before, but so I knew what to expect, I guess, but it still takes me aback every time I step out on the street. I don't know if we should, if you said maybe we could get a survey out and get some results back quicker. I'd rather not wait another month to decide what we're going to do about the fencing. Trying to cover it up would just be lipstick on a pig. It's still going to look pretty terrible. And in terms of the number of driveways, if we shorten the pilot to just the 2 blocks rather than 3, it's really only 2 driveways. And the Kennedy can use the parking behind town hall on the weekends.
Sure.
So anyway, there's
But
lots.
here's the thing.
Places have more parking challenges than us, and in the winter you can't park on the street. It would only take a little getting used to close down the street just on the weekends. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, come and go as you please. I think I outlined everything in my email, and I'd be happy to discuss it further. But debating it, I don't see how we're really going to get anywhere.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, Kurt, is I'm not sure I like the idea of just having 2 streets, because then my street, like where my office is, there are quite a few stores and the ice cream shop. Because I mean, unlike Councillor Grew, I use that roadway. I've seen a lot of people use that roadway. And I just want to point one thing I just heard out, which I think was fully irresponsible on it was just bad behavior for a councillor. There's no COVID hotspot in this town. Honeybeans and the people there, one of the best uses of social media, telling people to wear masks. All their employees are masked. I see them putting tables back and making people stand where they should stand. Picking on a local business like that is unforgivable. But anyways, let's move on to what we're doing.
Whoa. I stand corrected.
That's what you said.
No, I stand, I'll correct you on that, Councillor Harrison. I have been there and seen people huddled together 2 feet apart. Okay? And
I've been to the IGA
I don't
and seen
the
that.
staff at Honeybeans.
Well, I've been
It might
everywhere.
have been a poor choice of words.
Gentlemen.
But
Gavel, please.
I resent that implication because.
Well, that's what you said. Anyways, I'll move on. But I think all of these streets with a lot of stores should also have access, because people will congregate on the blocks you close. And then the stores outside of that, I think, will really lose business. And so I don't think it's as simple as just having 2 streets. But, and I don't know, I think people will use it as we go, but I think we should find ways to encourage people to use it, to mask up, as Edie said, because I really don't want our town, which will be a bit of a crossroads with tourists, to all of a sudden become Florida. And I think we should fight against that and try to encourage good behavior. But I think there's better ways to encourage it. But anyways, I think a few weeks of trying this out is the best option, just to see where it goes. And then if closing streets down fully is the best option, that's fine. But I still stand by. I mean, I think we can cover these metal gates or whatever they are. And it does look a lot better than a bunch of cars. Like I always thought that took away from the town just as much.
Just to clarify with, I guess one point the deputy mayor made, which I had the same idea when it was first presented, but what Councillor Gumichel is suggesting is closing down the street completely. So what you're talking about is essentially 4 barricades. So it would be very easy for town staff to take it up and to set it up and take it down for 4 barricades that close the street. One at, say, William, King, and then from King to Frederick. And then it's sort of like Canada Day. Instead of having all these barricades on both sides of the road. That's so it from a staff point of view, it would be a lot easier to set up and take down.
No. But you're gonna need people to man those gates, because people will move them like they did on Canada Day.
People will be trapped and they'll move them and they'll leave them open. It happens every Canada Day or every Indulge festival.
Yeah. Well, we have a commissioner downtown that we just hired.
Isn't this the issue with the wharf though? Everyone's just moving the gate on their own.
Everybody's moving. Yeah, that's true. But
maybe we can buy like 8 gates, all with fobs.
That would work.
I do think that shortening up the pilot to just 2 blocks closing them just on the weekends, having regular hours, encouraging people not to overnight park on the weekends is the way to go. It's a quick, easy solution. I put quite a bit of thought into it. I talked to a lot of people. I haven't been able to present it to the BIA. That Zoom call, that consultation never happened. Perhaps I'm missing something, but it seems number one, it gets rid of the ugly cattle fencing. Number two, it gives better opportunities to socially distance. And number three, it addresses a lot of the mobility issues and getting downtown. And just seems like, well, I circulated. I didn't hear back from everybody, but those I did hear back from, there were some positive comments. And so I was encouraged by that, but we're not really getting anywhere. We're just kind of going in circles. So we still
you could always add that to the survey idea I have, and we could probably get it out by Wednesday, just dropped off to all the businesses and tell them to email us by Sunday. That gives them, 4 days to get back and send a quick response on what they think. And then we could meet with the BIA and Chamber next week and make an educated decision at some point next week.
Well, I do think that that there's something to that, Deputy Mayor, but I think at the same time we have to present, a possible alternative. It's not as simple as yes or no. It's like, what about maybe, so to speak, like.
So that's what I'm saying. Add your suggestion to the bottom of it. Would you consider a 2-block road closure just on weekends? And then we could worry about what that looks like based on results.
And just to clarify, it's not just this is kind of in working with other people. It's not just me came up with this idea. There's some of the local businesses.
We won't attach any names to it. We'll just say the concept.
That's just me. Yeah.
The Goo Michelle plan.
Yeah.
Great. No problem.
Project
For it to be the council plan.
You know that I was
May I
opposed
speak?
to the gates.
May I
Certainly.
speak?
Yes, Councillor Bishop.
I would like to speak. I thought when we initiated this plan that we were going to let it go until the end of July, and then we were going to review our assessment of it. When you've only had it in effect for like a week and a half or however long it's been, I'm not sure, it doesn't really give you a good picture of how it's working. That's my opinion.
We also Bishop said that we would amend things on the fly, and it's like, if you got a bad haircut and it looks terrible, you fix it. You don't wait a month to
well
it grows in.
I think we're belaboring this a little too long tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Put a hat on it.
Because we have some other things to discuss too.
Still a bad haircut.
Could we do one thing? Can we do like look into those streets that we want to do one way? And I know some of them are like, because Queen is tough one way, but I think like kind of like Frederick, obviously we would never close both sides. It widens. And I know some of those side streets are wider than others, because I mean, I park down there every day for work, and I just think like there's some that are really skinny, like Edward, and I think William is wider, because we actually took, we extended the road a bit 2 years ago and made a little gravel area to park in front of some homes that I think it can handle more cars. And if we really don't want to cut parking spots we don't have to cut. So with this plan, like I think maybe with that motion that we put off, maybe we should look a bit harder at which side streets can handle two-sided parking as opposed to which can't. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm sure staff can canvass that better than I, but I'll throw that out there.
Okay, perhaps we just keep that tabled for now and ask staff to evaluate that and come back to us quickly about that. Okay, where are we at? We've had our discussion. I guess I'll throw my 2 cents worth in, although I'm not supposed to. I don't think I'm going to take a COVID-19 vaccine that only had a 3-day trial period, clinical trial period. So I'm with Councillor Bishop. I think we decided we would take this 4 weeks into the future and then make a proper evaluation. I think that's what we should do. up to you guys. So, anyway, what's next? Are we going into closed session?
Yes.
Yes, Your Worship, there's some stuff that should be discussed in closed session.
I'll look for a motion to go into closed session then. Mr.
I
Knopper?
so move.
Of course, Mr. Knopper, are we, oh, Mr. Knopper?
Give him 1 sec, Mr. Mayor. Let me get us off Facebook and
Okay.
shut down. Okay?
Great,
So are those,
please. A motion to come out of closed session.
I so move.
Okay, seconded. Okay, good. We're out of closed session. Now a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
A motion to adjourn.
Good night.
Everyone.
Right.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.